And welcome everybody! Getting things underway. It's another week. It's another start of the week, better yet, so you know what that means. We're running things once more here in Valorant, getting finals underway. I mean, obviously, it's the best time of the year. We not only get ourselves a much better action in terms of teams, but we get much longer series to work with as well. So we get to see these full-fledged out teams and what they really have to offer. Only problem is, it's a day before clubs kind of cut off in registration here for the types of compositions, but it's all good. It's all fine and dandy. We got another season coming underway, but at least for right now, you got myself, Dallas, or at least better yet known as Mick, joined by Zobi, and we're going to go ahead and get things running here.
We are. We have the Northeast Playoffs Grand Finals, as you touched upon, for the Champions Division. Utica University Varsity A versus Northeastern. And these two squads, I've had the pleasure of casting over Utica before, and I know they're a force to be reckoned with. A core 5 versus Northeastern. They are so flexible, having players sub in and out with availability and strengths and weaknesses, which could come in handy in, as you mentioned, the full-fledged best of 5 Mick. But let's take a look at these teams and what those players hold.
Yeah, already looking on the side of Northeastern, we got the likes of W-Sun, Orca, Tempest, Big Nate, and Ionize. I love Big Nate. I love people that have those little kind of preludes to their name, because obviously you can't go ahead and go too crazy with it. If you like the comms, if you like your personal name being used inside of it, why not just go ahead and throw it there into the mix and make sure it's part of your tag as well. But that wraps up Northeastern. Let's go ahead and take a quick little likes at the Utica University roster.
Yep, we got Wizard, Henzo, Pristine, Jadel, and Anchor 2D. And all of these players, minus Pristine, who's on that more fixed duelist role, are so flexible in what role they will fill based on the map demands that I'm hoping that will make that kind of map pool well-rounded here today, Mick. But I mean, best of 5, your weaknesses are going to be exposed one way or another. So let's take a look at those map picks and bans. Well, I will cover the map picks and bans for you to clear the air, which is that our first map is going to be Ascent, followed by Lotus, Split, Icebox, and Breeze, with the first and third picks being Utica Universities, and the second and fourth pick being for the side of Northeastern. Now, for me personally, when I look at these map picks and bans, it does feel like Icebox and Split are heavily favoring Northeastern versus maps like Ascent are going to be favoring Utica University. So it's really going to be a matter of the strengths of Northeastern against the well-roundedness of Utica University. Either way, I'm excited to see if this will go the distance or not, because once again, like I mentioned, Utica U, if you have that core 5 that you rehearse with time and time again, that you're scrimming with time and time again, it's a little bit different than maybe those duos or trios that Northeastern might have built up, since they do have other players tagging in, like Qingtian and Darm once in a while. So those set plays might be a little bit fuzzy when you're trying to refer to one player that's not actually in the lobby. Other than that, though, let's start talking a little bit about that map 1 of Ascent, the tried and true. And I actually thought there was a chance we wouldn't see Ascent, ironically, even though it's the collegiate special, just because it's not the strongest map for Northeastern. They're 2 and 3 this season on it, Mick.
Yeah, I think honestly, I mean, it shows there's still a little bit of potential and adjustments to be made over the course of like at least this series alone. But that's kind of the benefit that comes around with these best of 5s. You're not really stressing out too much. You do have a little bit more insurance under your feet, so you're not really kind of feeling that heat well upon you just yet. Once you do lose that first map, you know that, okay, even if the maps that we're not necessarily the most strongest at, we can really get ourselves to the point where, okay, things come down to it. We can technically sack a map as much as we don't want to, but I mean, in a best of 5, it's all about stamina. It's all about the long run. It's making sure that, say, if you are down maybe 12-2 or something just egregious, you're just kind of sitting that one out to some degree. You're saying, let's go into the next one. This is going to be a long night regardless. And, well, when it comes down to it, don't really stress the rough things too much, because especially when it gets this long, all the bad things just kind of start to blend with each other. So you're not really beating each other up over that map 1 anymore. You're not really thinking about the mistakes you made there. It's just kind of left there for the VOD. You're thinking about, okay, we got a lot longer of a night ahead of us, and it's all good. And that's why I love seeing these kind of stamina races. They feel much more like a marathon and a lot less like a sprint. You can tell that not only in the teams and how they play, but their compositions as well, because they look to slow things down a little more, trying to see how much they really want to conserve for the sake of it.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels like that's exactly what they were targeting with these map picks. Maps 1 and 2 feel like they're targeting their opponent's weaknesses to try and get that mentality into a ditch before they have to climb out of it in those last few maps, versus maps 3 and 4 are more of the strengths of the respective teams picking them. But I'm curious to see if you think we're going to get the mirror matchup for Ascent, our first map, or
I hope
what
not.
exactly is going to be the case since Utica is starting out on attack and Northeastern is starting out on the defense.
I think honestly, if we saw Clove available, maybe we'd finally see something different. But I mean, sadly, it is Ascent. It is a grand final situation. So more than likely, we will be getting a
Yeah.
mirror matchup. So, I mean, it's the reality of the situation. It is how it is. But I mean, regardless, though, I mean, it's the reason it is because of a particular reason. It just is how teams feel the most comfortable. You can't really mess anything up too much. And I mean, it just works so darn well. It feels like, I mean, every single nook and cranny of this map can be covered by these compositions. And better yet, it's not even like you're expending a lot of utility to cover the nooks and crannies of this map. It feels like everything just kind of regenerates. You got that knife from the KO, you get the dart from the Sova, you get the Omen smokes, and just those three things alone is enough to just kind of get everything you need to either set up an exec or maybe find a clutch. And even then, if you do lack a couple pieces there, it also easily compensates everything necessary.
All right. So the compositions, the mirror matchup is set, and we are getting ready to jump into this map. Now, for me, though, I do notice, like I said, because of those changes that typically happen from the northeastern side, that some of the agents, like Orca, who normally plays like a Killjoy when King Jin and Darn are playing, is on that jet. So again, it's going to be testing the flexibility of these players because W Sun isn't here to play that jet, that duelist in their stead. But already into the first round, looking like they're going for that mid default to punish any over aggression that might be coming out of northeastern. But that aggression's actually on the extremities, mainly Orca pushing out a main, getting that orb, and getting back to the safety of their team in numbers.
And I like this idea already coming through from Utica. I mean, just going ahead, pushing it in the middle of the map, seeing if they want to fight this pressure. I mean, it's a little bit of a litmus test, right? It's not just going ahead and counteracting that pressure that could have been theoretically there, but even more so, it puts the pressure through the middle of the map where it makes it now have to be checked, and you're allocating resources and stretching them a little bit more than usual. So already looking at some pressure on site, looking at these kills going through, Butt House being contested, you see a one-for-one trade, but you see more players already on site actually holding things down. So Utica, while they don't have the spike, they got plenty of real estate to make some magic happen, but they got to get the kills because, well, everybody's here on site.
What?
And Big Nate able to go ahead and find something there for a little bit, but two more players were just in their way.
Yeah, I mean, Utica doing a good job, as you mentioned, being the exterminators of those rats hiding out there in Boat House in back sight. But then at the end of the day, after they clear out sight, yes, Spike was left behind. Yes, there was that hero play from Big Nate, but it truly was not enough. The re-clear, the re-wrap from Wizard with that Deagle buy up, very popular nowadays among the Killjoys, is what bails them out, gets that first round on the board, and now charges up these more expensive weapons. Spectres across the board, minus Anchor, who might be looking for some sniper rifle action here.
Yeah, just looking for something early, and even then, not only do I like just kind of diverse buys, kind of preserving what came from the last round, but I love seeing Guardian buys in the second round. They're just basically like Vandals, just like Phantoms. They have that one-shot headshot, but they literally are cheaper and technically better, because I always talk about how it comes down to that one-shot headshot threshold, and, well, the Guardian can meet it anywhere. Utica
That's
already
true.
opening things up with that Sheriff in hand, looking to put that pressure on the side. It's not going to do them all that well whenever that first shot is missed, but so long as you are feeling like all engines are kind of raring here and that you got all cylinders pumping, then you should be good to go.
You should, but now Pristine, you know, they are the duelists. They are trying to make that space, but they're about to contest those players, that numbers advantage on site. And so far, the timing, the flash, all have lined up. But they rely on Anchor Henzo with those better weapons to get the job done. But at the end of the day, it's Anchor with your favorite gun, just that Guardian. Get the job done. The first headshot finds its mark, and so do the body shots of the second. A 3K to bail out a messy second round, but a point on the board nonetheless.
Hey, no spike going down either. That's an extra 300 creds technically on the side of Northeastern just because they're robbed away. But even better yet, it's just a very, very, very expensive round, and that's all you're really looking for. Best case there for Utica. Sure, they get the round win, but the only real shining light out of that is saying, hey, we carried over the Guardian. Everything else is just kind of in shambles. You don't want to invest too much money here. You do see that Bucky coming through and the rest of them buying sheriffs, but even then more so, I mean, looking at the potential of sheriffs, I like how Northeastern already knows how to use these things. They get aggressive, they get close, they close that gap, and they make sure to take the fights on their own terms. But speaking of terms, your terms can be, well, flipped once more. Utica, it is expected aggression, but good God, not to the degree that we just saw. No gun pickup after the fact, though, which is a little unfortunate.
It's okay, Dark cover's out, drones out, it should pave the way. Unfortunately, though, a paranoia to hold the front line, but Tempest is getting pinched from tree. Fortunately, the better weapon gets the job done, and there it is, that focus on that collected weapon. That is just perfect. Draw cheese to the trap for Big Nate to hold on to that A site with an ironclad defense. They make Northeastern's third round rifle buy as clean as possible. Only one person falling, like we said, that victim to the Bucky. And I mean, Utica University, yes, it was messy, but then again, that was your bonus, and when you only had one player walk away, just getting a rifle off here and there is all you can hope for.
Best case scenario, I mean, it was your duelist who lost this. I mean, that's your Jet losing that ult tick, so it's or gaining one. So you're saying, all right, that's technically closer to a blade storm, all things considered, and that was just our retake agent. If she's already dead, it doesn't really matter that much, right? I mean, we're still looking pretty peachy.
Ooh.
Everything's looking out fine, but even more so, one thing that is looking good so far is this exec coming out. At least popping that null command, going ahead, getting that extra aggression, causing that suppression, but that doesn't stop the rifles from firing the bullets. That already shuts that initial player. You got guys pushing onto site. You got everything being kind of covered here, but once more, it's showing that Utica, they are very great at taking this space, but Northeastern are also really darn good at stalling it.
And they've splintered kind of this execution into sight. Or kind of slipped through the cracks, found two, denying the spike plant, placing Henzo in the hero's position with only 1 HP here. And albeit it's going to be a 1v1 since we're going to see Big Nate fall at the end of that null command. But I mean, they've gathered that information. They know position that they were playing for. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, Tempest. If you don't shoot your weapon, you can't clutch out the round. And University Varsity A will claim that 4th round and continue expanding upon this lead.
The unfortunate thing is there that even then you saw Tempest backing up, trying to work for a little bit of a play, see if a rotation come out, work off the audible, kind of get that timing to yourself. But I mean, Big Nate is sitting there on site with visual saying, buddy, he is here. You just have to swing him eventually. And I'm surprised you didn't go for the lap around. I mean, you technically have constant surveillance on this guy. It's not another Omen where they're going to shadow step somewhere or just kind of trip you up to some degree. You know exactly where that location is going to be, and we'll just use the common denominator. It locks down their position. But speaking of locking down positions, already you're locking down this A site once more, at least on that defensive side. B is being straight exact out. We're seeing a lot of aggression come through for Utica where this side is hit again and again and again. I mean, it's been what? At least out of the 4 rounds played, they've hit it 3 of those times, and, well, it's always been really rough. I think they know that they find relative success here, and they just want to say, we just want one clean round here to know that, okay, then we can move our attention somewhere else. But this is looking so close every single time, they at least put their attention on it to put that pressure on Utica to make them think they may go on.
I mean, this round, it was more of a fake off of that mentality, like you said, off of that reputation they've set of following through on this B execs. They had this default, this approach towards A, but unfortunately, in my mind, they didn't follow through on it fast enough. You saw it, the rotations out of the A site, but now Big Nate's on their way back. Wizards deposit themselves in, but it's been spotted out. So now the mass exodus from Northeastern is going to come through, and it is going to contest pretty early on before spikes even getting planted. Now with Henzo and that lurk getting taken out as well, it requires some forward positioning, some proactivity from the rest of the team, like Pristine pushing forward with the blades into heaven, but they realize they only have a judge as that fallback and do not want to challenge it.
Already, once again, I mean, finding that easy real estate that we see Utica getting on such a consistent degree, but already, I mean, the one thing they're lacking here is going to be those weapons. So it allows Northeastern to, once again, I mean, when we've seen these rounds won by such a narrow margin, when these rounds already look pretty darn narrow in the favor of Northeastern, it has to come down to a clutch, which we could see Jade do if it comes down to this last singular player. But with only 1 shot worth of HP available left to you, it's going to be ionized to take downs out on top. So looking at 2 and 3 on the leaderboard, it's going to be good here for Northeastern to kind of keep things relevant. Not let that score differential get way too out of bounds here for them to kind of surmount a comeback, and keeping this first half look pretty darn, I'd say at least doable. I mean, it's still extremely early in the game. These rounds are trade-offs of, I mean, just very consistently. And even that kind of round, I mean, the second one and the 4th one, both of them we saw, I mean, Utica barely squeaked by. They had a singular player alive on both those rounds. So it lets you know that Northeastern, even the rounds they lose, man, do they make it expensive. And they even then kind of win it sometimes.
Yeah, that round definitely felt like more of who made the bigger mistake, whether it was the wish shot to the Bladestorm from Pristine or the inability to clear out those Hell players from the side of Northeastern on that retake. At the end of the day, 1v1 clutches come through. The shots from that Soviet utility into Hell made it so they walked away with the advantage. But look at this early round pressure here, A main. All 5 players from University trying to leverage this thrifty buy into some early frags. My concern is that Orca has the Outlaw. Flash comes through, and they have to use a lot of utility to get away. They have to cash in on that big Nate pressure in their back pocket, and they're going to lose their life. But the duel, the numbers advantage ends up going in their favor.
I love it. You look at the buys. I mean, you go ahead and take a peek at Northeastern. You're saying those aren't full rifles. Surely this is an eco round for them, and things aren't looking too hot. And then you look at Unica. It's like, oh yeah, it could definitely be worse. Theirs is the real eco, and it's just how the cookie crumbles. You see that even then, with how these rounds are being won by a narrow margin, there's a lot of sacrifices being taken, a lot of guns that are just going ahead and biting the bullet for that sake of just kind of getting these rounds and finding that pressure. And Northeastern, this literally feels like a second round once more, where somebody's on the force buy and somebody's just trying to squeak something together once more. But already, speaking of squeaking, we see them trying to squeak out some pressure on that A side, trying to slip past those cracks and make them think, okay, we're not going to go back to the A side. We're going to just kind of go ahead and blindly walk out through the smoke. But the issue is, when that smoke is there, somebody's more than likely going to be covering it. And you find both players, unfortunately, on that side.
Yeah, I mean, Utica, they really just wanted to plant there, so the fact that that falls through is unfortunate thanks to the hero play of Jingti and Ma. So we're tied here 3-3. They're back to a buy, and now, I mean, Orca, with that save that they had out of the Outlaw instead of a rifle buy, it was the cost of some frags, but it charges up this operator buy, which can be really hard to deal with on the offensive side on an execute, which is why Orca now has the correct angle. If they play with time enough out of this lockdown, the flash though forces them to respect it, and that's going to be an open B site for business.
I mean, this is kind of the first time we've seen Utica take this just for free, obviously off the back of the lockdown. It's a very expensive expenditure, but I mean, the rest of the team, we've seen Northeastern retake this so consistently. Whether or not they lose all the necessary players, it's always been by very narrow margins. So even then, when you do see initial play go through, it's immediately exchanged. My biggest question is, where is this jet going to take place here? You only have that operator. It's not really going to hold too much down, so you're hoping the rest of your team kind of carry the weight. Problem is, without that pressure, without that just force right out the get-go to break through that wall, it makes things pretty difficult to kind of give the rest of your team that avenue, just kind of capitalize off that chaos that's currently ensuing. So that's a very expensive round for Northeastern to really bite the bullet on.
I mean, you mentioned it, that Northeastern's been very structured on those retakes, but it's because they're at the site early that they can disrupt kind of that post-plant repositioning that Utica University likes, and that round the lockdown forced them to respect it. So then you can say, all right, who's holding off this one-way stairs? Who's holding lane? What off angles are we setting up, like the own with the Shroud Step on top of the mid boxes? All of that just falls into place and makes it a really strong hold for Utica University varsity. Now with this round, it's that kind of standard slow approach because they're kind of trying to weed out any aggressive plays Northeastern might pull together if they are out of a stronger buy. This time, though, not going to come through. No stacked pushes, no overzealous expeditions. So now they just have to start clearing angles, figure out where they want to go.
I'm excited to see how this kind of slow and steady mindset works out for Utica. We haven't really witnessed it yet. They like just going ahead, pushing on these sites with kind of surround to a little bit of a fake somewhere and then go for a default across the map, or it just kind of comes down to an all-in-one approach to a single avenue. But we haven't seen this kind of scenario yet. And I think they're kind of forcing the point to where they're like, Northeastern aren't on the best buy here. They're going to be trying to stretch themselves out for something, and you can already get an idea of where some of that's coming from. If it's going through middle, more than likely some of it is coming from B, and that's why you have the jet there. And just slowly, one by one, just inch your way forwards, and Utica know that, well, somebody's going to be holding these corners, and even then, when they're trying to go for the rotate, they can't really fight these efficiently, except for Jingchen could be the only one to actually really hold that down, but with only a Vandal in hand, you can find one, but the rest of the team is just there to knock you off.
I mean, that round just felt like Utica University varsity identified and took advantage of a lapse in the wide map defensive control. I think that's exactly why this timeout's being taken by Orca as well, because they should not be able to slip through those cracks as easily. Because again, by getting those early frags before Spike has been planted, before B-side has been completely taken, they again disrupt that same style, that same set retake that Northeastern is really strong and really well developed in. So I guess that's what they're talking about here, is how to ensure those players don't slip through the cracks, or how to ensure that they maintain that numbers advantage for a retake, especially when they've been sitting on ultimates like the lockdown, like the no command, that are seasoned for that kind of retake attempt.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely with you on that note. I think, quite frankly, even the Northeastern haven't really been in that bad of a spot. I mean, their game has been fine so far. Let's keep in mind that last round, I mean, you could literally just chalk up to the lockdown. I mean, as much as it hurts to say that, you're trying to go ahead and make all these plans and whatnot, that sure, the post play doesn't look all that great in terms of retake, but that's because your typical game plan is disrupted by the most expensive ultimate in the game. So it's not going to be available every single round. So you just go ahead and let it be known that, okay, it is expensive for a reason. Don't let it really hard on you too much. But considering that already that you have one of your own as well, the no command is there to play with, and you can at least have somewhat of an effect, as detrimental as it may be, or even as slight as it may feel in your half. It's still something to use nonetheless. And I'm kind of with you that they need to be spreading these things out more so. I mean, this is going to be a very long night if this does go the distance. And these teams have to just press that X button when it's available, because you're going to get another one. Just make sure to use it to get that lead in the first place.
Yeah, and that's something interesting with these teams is you'll go from one map that is like an 11-13 to maps that are 13-5s, 13-4s on the dime out of left field. And again, that's what the best of 5 is going to test here. So now, getting back out of the timeout into this round. Again, Utica University with the more reserved approach to ensure that any of those creative plays you might make on an eco round from Northeastern, especially after following a timeout, won't be able to find any fruition, any fruit of that labor. For example, Ionize with its mid-escapade, not going to find anybody tiles, other than information that this really doesn't look like a B execute.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, off of this, you could even call for the Jet to just rotate to mid, set up a pinch with you, and then just set up to be there for A almost instantaneous. I mean, with the guns not really being there for Northeastern, you can't really freak out about the status of this round too much. But you are looking to just make things, once again, very expensive for Utica. You have a lot of ultimates. You have that lockdown to play for the retake, and it's very easy towards Tree. But when you see already that 1 kill, 2 kills, 3 off the back of it, now the numbers advantage are going into your favor. And we see this kind of team that we saw on that second round. These Sheriff Marshals, these absolute units with the 6 shooters, well, they can win themselves a thrifty, and that entire timeout pays off in dividends.
I mean, at that point, I feel like you have to listen, or if the IGL didn't call it, for the disengagement that you should have had there once you realize the numbers are stacked. Again, like we said, that expenditure early on into the round from Ionize to explore out towards tiles allowed the numbers advantage to be on the A site, and as soon as they see that many players there and all that utility being invested upon upon Pristine's execution, you need to be like, all right, guys, let's get out of Dodge. And what's even more scary is that if they had fallen, there was still the flank from Ionize.
Yep.
But look at this. Whew. The one round, they're not prepared for this this push out is when Orca does it.
And I'm loving this idea a little bit more. So, I mean, going ahead, going for that double peek, and when you get the tailwind available, just go ahead and use it while you can. But even more so, this early aggression that isn't off the back of an operator. I love it when teams understand that, okay, we cannot rely on this kind of operator crutch over the course of the game. We need that early aggression. We need to disrupt something if we can. And already when you knock that KO out, that's a no command that's gone. That's a knife that's gone. That's basically the entire team's flashes that is out of here. So that makes their exec onto a site much, much more difficult, purely because you took that risk, and knowing that even then, worst case scenario, if that Jet dies, that's your play that was already there. That's the rest of the team that's going to be off the back of that, already playing on the B site that you so efficiently hold on a round-to-round basis when everybody's already present, that knowing they don't have a lockdown, you're not really stressing too much there. You can just play it slow, everybody stand still, don't budge, and, well, eventually they'll come right to you, and you can just clean up the rest.
I was hoping that we were going to see an A-site rotation fake coming out from these members like Pristine, like the Omen, but the fact that they got seen by that owl drone over on B-site means that Silva's probably going to anchor just a bit, and they do, but Wizards able to find them on the fall-off, and Pristine finding these frags with limited time means B-site is open, it's deserted, and it's going to have to be a huge late-round rotation. My only concern is it's still going to be a numbers disadvantage, so it's going to require some hero plays, some forward pressure now from Wizard and Jade out, which is exactly what they're trying to set up here.
The issue is, I mean, you don't really have much space to do that, right? I mean, you're not looking towards the flank. You have all that KG utility kind of invested forwards, and that's already where the Sova's setting up. So obviously playing off the trade of it. But when you see that all the investments and all the kind of utility available at the hands of Utica University, I mean, it's just like, what can you really do? Northeastern, they have so many yellow borders that we've been looking at for the past couple of rounds that they finally get to a point to say, let's not choke this one up. It's pretty easy. Just pop a null command, and that's going to be one of the ones that we get back much quicker. So it's worth the investment.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit of a gamble play, obviously, from JDL. They're like, if I sacrifice myself, maybe Wizard can go huge with the spray transfer on those last two remaining on CT, and this time their Wizard magic is not enough. But what may be enough is, as you mentioned, these yellow borders, these ultimates that have been charging up now for the Utica University side. I mean, they are sitting on all five, so even if they don't have the best buy together, for example, Pristine leading into that judge, they're gonna have those plays. They're gonna have these execution ultimates like a lockdown, like a no command that we've seen get them rounds, get them these sites where they can set up in a post-plant comfortable position. And I'm expecting that same thing here, and the respect from Northeastern as well to have the KJ play this far off site.
And even more so, I'm confused to know whether or not they're even going to invest that lockdown this round, because I mean, already we're seeing the Hunter's Fury come through, so that's going to be a free lockdown later on. This is an investment to make, and even then it's getting shut down by that null command. You have to keep that space, and they just didn't do that. That's not a checked box. So what is checked, though, is that spike on site almost instantaneously. A little bit of damage done to that Sova, kind of the Sova situation with the Hunter's Fury being popped, but I mean, considering that, the rest of the team, they are just sitting back trying to figure out what exactly is going on and what the next steps may be. Well, first step I can tell you, press W, and that's what they're doing. Getting themselves on the site, going for a little bit of the split, a 3-1 scenario, now 3-2, everybody's here. It is an absolute slaughter, and the only one left now is going to be Anchor, right back towards spawn, trying to go on that flank. Promise, it just didn't come in time.
That just felt like a major lapse in communication for Utica University, right? They had the perfect counters to set up. They expect lockdown retake to come through. That's why they saved their Hunter's Fury and instead used the null command for the entry. But they had nobody protecting the Sova in that situation other than Pristine, who fell really early thanks to Ionize recognizing, hey, they don't expect us to be pushing in this early off of the lockdown. And that's ultimately what locks in that 6th round for them, confirms at least a tied match. And now when they can dump their entire wallets into this last round bye, you're finally going to see that Operator Odin combination come out, which can definitely be a killer to an attacker's plan. Lockdown, though, invested here towards B main. Operator going to try and contest similarly to how it did the last time this was utilized. And this time, there's no flashes, there's no support for Pristine, so they're going to find that opening pick.
Even then, I mean, the rest of the team already understand and saying, that's not what I want to happen to me. Already queuing a rotate instantaneously. So, I mean, that lockdown, sure, while it was literally the definition of winning that round, while it was the core foundation to just kind of an easy takeover in the last attempt, in this one, it literally is just nothing. Doesn't really choke up too much. If anything, it actually helped you to some degree because, well, while you didn't have every singular player there, it was a gamble that just didn't pay out in your favor. That Operator was there last time, it's there this time, but the difference is you've now lost your duelist. You still got 2 initiators, one of which is a pseudo duelist, being that KO. But now you've given also time for the Operator to reposition, go somewhere else, and that could be another surprise death on your hands when you go somewhere else. And as we know, it's over towards A. It's allocated there, but they still think it may be B, and that's why they clone these, like clearing these corners as slowly as humanly possible, just making sure they have the utility off the back of it. So know that Ionize is picked off.
Shot.
They're just looking towards the back of that boathouse. They're still taking it slow. They still have some concerns. Well, 15 seconds left on the clock. I mean, this is your dedication, no matter what.
Yeah, but look at the pinch play, the timing there from Big Nate to ensure that they're going to have numbers advantage on this retake attempt. It's again going to be how Utica can set up for this utility, set up for these frags, and the answer so far is Wizard finding some from Boathouse. They have Henzo as well for any possible trades, and suddenly the playing field has been leveled. Dark cover to try and split up these players. Flashpoint potentially going to be invested, but they choose it's better just to rely on these guns, and that might not be enough. The 3K from Henzo looking for a 4th to get the round, instead recognizing they can play time, and the classic shots from Tempest are enough for Northeastern to find that lead, to find that 7th at the half.
I'm not gonna lie, this half actually feels like it's deserved. I mean, everything, not just this last round, felt like it led up to it, but you could genuinely tell over the course of this half of really the adaptations that were made, and that Northeastern just felt like a better team from the start, purely off those first 2 rounds that they lost, where it wasn't kind of even off the pistols, where even then on the second round, keep in mind, they were still making things expensive, getting it down to that singular player, and also off the back of that Thrifty. I mean, how could you not just understand that, well, with the close score differential there, that's going to be enough to turn the tides to your favor. So now being the attacking side of the map, I'm curious to see what their approaches are looking like. They're going for a little bit more vanilla standout build, I would say, kind of looking for that default across the map, but instead of going for that first round B hit, they're going to be going for that A side, and they're just kind of letting that KJ gather information to understand what the default on the defense may look like for Utica, and see whether they want to replicate that same kind of mid pressure that they found and that they wanted to fight for initially.
So now, the defense, the Miracom's often said that it's sided. But I mean, with this early utility to deny Pristine any opening frags and the fast response out of Orca into this site, and the lurk from Ionize as well to add to that, a lot of these first bloods and site control are headed over towards the northeastern side. This pistol would be huge, but the players here for mid on Utica's side are not giving up without a fight. They've taken out the lurk player. Now they're on the rotation to try and reinforce Pristine to the solo player here right now on the A side, and Orca up close and personal with a frenzy, and now even trying to contest those tree players makes it a 3v2, barely favoring Northeastern.
That's my biggest concern there, is the fact that even in the middle of the map, Ionize gave up that Sheriff, which becomes just an absolute unit for this retake. It feels like it's such a suppressive gun because of the damage it can do, the penetrative power that it has. But problem is the timer's the one thing really taking you up here. I mean, it has been so long for you to make this rotation. While there has been a lot of damage done, well, you're just playing Ring Around the Rosie at this point, quite frankly. I mean, Tempest, even with the missed shots, and even if you do die in the process, there's not enough for a defuse. So you're just taking the round as you can and flying colors, at least to some degree in terms of the timing that you're playing off with. But knowing that 8 to 5, that's what you're looking at. That's the round that you're getting. And these buys are just extraordinary off the back. When you win these attacking rounds, I mean, as much as I usually love the Guardian buy, it makes sense on the attacking side with that extra 300 credits. The entire rest of the team, though, looking to follow it up and get that just kind of established confidence of leading that half after shutting down that second round buy on the side of Utica. They understand that they could probably invest a little bit more just because they perform better in these situations.
So, pistol going in favor of Northeastern here. That means 1 apiece for both of these squads here on Ascent. You can see that kind of gamble stack towards the B site, incorrectly made by Utica, so it's going to be a free A site for the retake unless Wizard can find something here from this tree position. But all that Sova utility going to delay it out. Right click, RNG not going to land this go around either. Means a 5-on-5 retake is in the cards, Mick.
Really, really slow retake here. But I mean, just kind of waiting for everybody, understanding that all the utilities available. Recon darts up, knife is up. I mean, everything is just available and has those kind of yellow bottoms to them. So considering that, I mean, you have the majority of these players, though, coming right back from heaven. That's a big concerning thing here, is that you're going for the close quarters. You're forcing this fight into what feels like an octagon, an MMA match inside of the smoke. The problem is there's not enough actual execution. There's not enough players there to back it up. There's not enough actual substance in terms of these guns and these players to really get the job done. So sure, you got one more remaining player. You got the call-outs that damage has been done all over the place, so why not just kind of go ahead and at least peek it to some degree? But with that spike ticking down, knowing those last couple seconds, Northeastern had the majority of their guns, so they're going to prioritize to carry those things on to the next. Knowing they had so many Bulldogs and that Guardian that, honestly, that could carry another round for them and shut down this initial buy coming through from Utica. To at least, I'd say, keep it equal to some degree. I think if Utica end up having at least 3 players at the end of this round, that's usually a natural win. But honestly, looking at the performance of what we see Northeastern in these kind of thrifty situations where they're at a deficit in terms of the money, they still always cut down a majority of the players. They always leave them to at least 2 or 1. So, I mean, that would be a miracle to pull that off here.
It would. And I mean, this buy, I would say, definitely looks scary, but it's a hefty investment from Utica University to try and get this first pivotal round on the board for their defensive half. I mean, Sova Utility invested. You can see the Odin from Wizard to try and deny a B main exec, but it's his default from Northeastern. Utica University has not been able to pinpoint just yet, and it's actually kind of mass rotations, falsely leaving Pristine here on the receiving end of a lot of pressure where, yes, that better weapon can find 1, but It's immediately traded out, and again, that's an open A site that now has to be retaken by Utica University, and this time they don't look like they're going to be patient about it.
I mean, already just going ahead, having this real estate to work with. I mean, the game has now already panned in towards their favor. I mean, looking at these kind of close quarter combats, you know the Phantoms are going to start to excel here, but you're not even really concerned about that. You're just looking at these angles that are being held, the kind of flanks that are surmounting over the course of the map, and already INI towards the middle of the map. You know that player's going to get knocked down eventually, but still, the closer these players get, the worse that these Bulldogs can really start to hit. And thank you, Tempest, for proving my point. Already knocking down so many, not even needing to substitute it to pick something else up. Understand that the Bulldog is probably going to be a better shot in that circumstance than any other weapon so long as it's ADS. So an easy closeout, a massive third round surmounted for him, and an easy double digits to be working with here to where you can go ahead and say that now in the final countdown to 3, 2, 1, and you have yourself another buy and Utica's looking at an eco. This is one of these situations where I say, sure, if it's like something abysmal, like a 10-2, you can kind of go ahead and call that next map. But a third round and a score differential like this is looking just as detrimental.
Definitely. And that round was scary because it showed not only a missed timing there with the jump up from Tempest, but even then a miscommunication where Anchor 2D didn't seem prepared as they swung out of that dark cover to take a fight from that player towards Heaven. So this round, I don't say they look like they're getting desperate, but you said it, a gap differential of 5 rounds now. They have to make a creative play, and that creative play is a 4-man sprint down catwalk here, and it's Tempest that's going to try and mow them down, but at the end of the day, it's a weapon conceded temporarily. Henzo taking the brunt of that damage, might have to pass it off here since you don't have a shield or HP to back it up, but correct response now made from Northeastern. They don't address it. They leave it to Ionized, which is able to deal with it. Now, I mean, you have a double front to deny anywhere the members of Utica University might go to try and get towards the safe site.
They got a sprint to work with here. I mean, sure, you got some great shots coming through from Henzo. A couple players knocked down. That's going to keep the rotates to get your rears back to side. This round isn't over just yet. The problem is, I mean, at least just having that presence there, having enough players around the site, working off that timer. You're literally waiting for an audible here, quite frankly, is what I feel. But Orca just decides that, well, I'm a duelist. What better things do I got to do? I should press W key and swing here. And as dangerous as a mission as that may be, considering you do have a player who's broken that door down to a very, very low health gate, it's a very easy break. It's an easy trade, all things considered, where it just feels like that door, it's kind of a quick draw in that circumstance. So 11-5 is the score so far. We're looking at these rounds, once again, kind of welling up more and more for the side of Northeastern. And this is where Utica take their time out. I would have expected it on that last round, quite frankly, but I like how teams look to kind of go ahead and use it on the end of an eco rather than at the start of it, because they understand that, well, we can just use this round because it's not looking all that great. We can use it a chance maybe to where if we squeak it out, hey, what do we really need? Just go right back to square one.
And I mean, the ultimates Northeastern has at this point to start closing out Ascent as well have to be on the back of Utica University's mind. Yes, they have the null command maybe shut them down, but I mean, Northeastern's been taking sites without much effort in the first place. So I kind of want to see them do what Northeastern did towards the end of the first half, which was go on that offensive, you know, have Orca, or in this case, Pristine, you know, push out B main, push out A main, and they've been doing it alone. They need an initiator in their back pocket. They need some form of support, some trade player, and that just has not been the case, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the case for this round either. I mean, Northeastern headed towards the B site, the better side, I would argue, for, say, a null command, especially when, you know, a Killjoy-Sova combination is what's typically playing there, and I just hope that we see the Killjoy Wizard and the Sova Jadel prepared for this stampede.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. Stampede is just about right. I mean, you're seeing the Bulls just run out of the gates. Considering you got that null command at the head of it, those are going to be the horns, and you just really can't contest that, because even then when it's down, it's not out. But looking at the one thing that you do kind of need to keep your eyes on with that Bull, the red flag is going to be that spike. Already down, already ticking at the top of your screen, and already put in this entire round once more in the hands of Utica, where they have to have an answer. And while the null command does come through, they do find a trade off the back of it, and Ionize may find just some great timing, but this could be the same exact situation of what we saw on the other end, where that alarm bot does get positions away, and if you're not fast enough, well, now you're just at a deficit. But it still doesn't matter. Jingjin's able to get one on site, able to kind of close things, play it slow, get that recon dart for a little more information, and you know it's holding. You don't care if they're holding an angle. It's so long as they're sitting there. Hey, that's not on spike. That's a good situation for us.
If they hadn't taken a timeout, I think they would have now saying shoot the Sova dart. I think the tried and true lesson on Ascent is that these walls are paper thin, and where you are planting that spike is no exception. I mean, they maybe expected a swing from Qingqianma, but either way, none of it comes through. And that is map point for Northeastern on, mind you, Utica's map pick here, potentially to start out this best of 5. I mean, the buy coming through isn't the best here either. Light shields across the board, and with the Blades and the Judge out here as well for Orca, this could get messy.
Already alarm bot letting you know exactly where they're coming from, too. I mean,
nice
we saw the Blaze Storm last time. Even then, Tailwind just absolutely barrel stuffed. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation, but I mean, still, guns are available, and damage has been done. Players are getting picked off, and Jade is having a round of a map. Already just going ahead and creating all the space necessary to alleviate that push and maybe take it elsewhere. But Ionize being the one last player, we've seen Ionize be this kind of 1vx player, being that lurker player around the map and just being the ones that kind of skulk somewhere different. So anybody could do it. I think Ionize, as long as you kind of drip feed these kills into your opponent's feed, I think honestly you could be fine. But if they actually play this smart and working an all-fronted assault together, I don't know if you do really have much of a chance, considering the kind of utility at hand, which isn't much.
I'm sorry, but if you're Killjoy, you're in the zone right now. 1vx clutches are the name of the game, and I'm surprised that they didn't invest the lockdown here. I mean, yes, you have 7 more rounds before OT that you can work with after the fact here, but this timing could be everything. Unfortunately, window not broken, so the sound comes through, and they will lose the majority of their HP as a result. If they use the lockdown at this point, it's going to get disrespected by Utica. I mean, not a shock dart alone here could get the job done. Anchor sticking the spike to half, the swing from the dark cover, the double swing, the 4K from Jadel, all to keep Utica University's chances alive here on Ascent.
I mean, just big sense there from Jadel. I mean, that was literally their round to win, and that's really what it came down to, quite frankly, just finding the majority of those players, and even then, not being really much of an actual performance just yet, sitting at 9 and 14 before that round. So, I mean, these entire kind of lineups of these players, you can tell that Enzo's been Himzo this game so far. I mean, really just been keeping the team on their back, making sure to kind of keep the sustainability for the rest of the squad and saying, look, these rounds are doable to where, say, in terms of eco, the kind of flip-flop back and forth that we do see of an eco and a full buy, it's technically only 3 rounds to get to an even half, or an even game, a guaranteed OT. But Northeastern, literally, as you mentioned, those ultimates, they're worth saving, because you only need 1 more.
Oh. And yeah, Orca has been insane on these entries, disrespecting utility, disrespecting the players of Utica, and they're not even the only player here. As Wizard, it's gonna fall. Qingqianma able to secure this ace site, and they're not done either. They want to ensure no flood retake comes through, or even provide a distraction for the lurk here from Orca inside of logs. At the end of the day, it's numbers advantage, a 2v4 for Utica, and all this utility and the lockdown make it seem near impossible.
Just more time on the board here for the side of Northeastern. Just delay, and a whole 8 seconds. That's going to surmount to a lot. And even then, still, darts going through, owl drones going out. I mean, you were just putting in these Utica players in a situation where it feels like we want to go for it, but we really can't push. They can get something there for a second, but still with 2 players remaining, you're just biding time. You're just delaying the game because, well, it seems like it's kind of a surefire shot to win that first map. So, great attempt there from Northeastern. While they started not really all the most hot, that was just the rounds that wasn't going to their favor. The kills were still there. The money was still there to topple on top of it. And it made sense that after that thrifty, just everything started going their direction. And that second half, knowing that the aggression was there, knowing their retakes were already quite clean, and knowing they could really just kind of mix things up and towards their direction, in the whole midst of chaos, I think that worked out better for them on attack, obviously, considering that, well, you're the one that's creating.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. And what concerns me here is not only was that Utica's pick, but now we're heading into a Lotus, which is a pick that was designed by Northeastern to target a weaker map in the pool of Utica. I mean, they've played it 3 times here in the NECC Champions Division, and they've only won it once. And on the other side of things, they're 2-0 on this map. So it's something that they're a little bit more confident on, and they're looking to try and head towards a 3-0 potential here in the cards, where in my mind, with that map 3 being split, yes, that's a great chance for Utica, one of their best maps, I would say. But with how we've seen Northeastern playing, I think it's possible.
It could definitely be one of those days, and unfortunately, it could fall on any day. It could be any old Sunday, it could be any old grand finals day, but that's just worst case scenario. There is a lot of time for them to kind of wake up to get themselves kind of in the running here. But I mean, Northeastern just looked like a much more solid team in that last map. I mean, but it's Ascent. We can't really go ahead. Ascent, that's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because everybody knows this to some degree. It's a mere composition, so you understand that if it really does match down, it's not much of a rock, paper, scissors. Not really any counters to kind of worry about. It really just comes down to the better team. And if Northeastern win it, saying, okay, maybe we're the better team, but looking at the compositions, look at these different maps and how they actually can kind of pan out towards the favor of one side or another. As you mentioned, that record, it could work out for a surprise element in Lotus and kind of win them out one, because it has been a long season here, or it could be something where they just can absolutely execute and get themselves on that match point.
Well, I mean, Lotus, it is Northeastern, like you said, that runs a more traditional comp versus a little bit more mainstream double initiator composition for Utica with a Breach Gecko potentially in our future. But we will have to wait and see what these teams will hold on that map, because we're going to jump to a quick break. And when we come back, map 2 of our best of 5 for the Champions playoffs.
And welcome back. We're getting things underway here with map number 2 of the Northeastern versus Utica University Esports Team, or Varsity A squad. And we just saw the conclusion of, well, if you're just counting in, maybe you're going to be happy about this one, Ascent. It went in Northeastern's favor. Map's already done and dusted, 1-0 in the series, but the next one we're going to be going to, you should be more excited about this, it's going to be Lotus. So something different on the board, something a little more fun, something a little more new and fresh. Not only just in terms of the actual players that are available, and even in these teams, at least in terms of broadcasting, but also the compositions we're used to seeing here.
Well, first we do want to look at, like we said, that done and dusted Ascent, where it was a 13-6 pretty dominant showing, considering that that was Utica's map pick. And I mean, look at that, the KO's showing up here, 300 ACS a piece, which is insane in its own right. I wish we could see the first bloods of those duelists, because I feel like the difference between Orca and Pristine would also be a cause for concern, and maybe a reason why we saw that success here from Northeastern. But at the end of the day, it definitely felt like every player was delivering, and it more was just the macro level adjustments that were being made, and there was a better response from Northeastern's side. When small mistakes were made, they adjusted quickly, they swept them under the rug, and kept chugging along.
Yeah, and also it was just the fact of their resilience, no matter the kind of guns that were put in their hands. We saw so many rounds where they had nothing but the sheriffs to work with, and they were still squeaking out rounds, or better yet, at least enough kills to make it look like that money's going to be hurting afterwards. I mean, round number 2 is the one that first comes to mind. The second one, obviously, being that thrifty they pulled off. So it lets you know that even then, I mean, taking place on, obviously, both of them being on the defensive end, you have less space to work with. You have less kind of, just enough of an idea and a blueprint to be setting up. And working in such a compacted space and still executing that shows that what happens when you give them an entire map to work with? What happens when you give them an entire real estate, basically? Not only if it's 2 sites, but 3 sites, and they can really get tricky with it. That's where things get a little more difficult, and they're saying, well, that's where we're taking it. And that's where the real concerns start to rise for Utica, because, well, as you mentioned, that being their map pick of Ascent, which I never really agree with too much. I always feel it should be left as a decider, because everybody knows it to some degree, and they're paying the price for it.
No, definitely. And I'm also concerned for Utica, because one of the things we didn't really see on Ascent was some of those kind of more proactive explorations, context-based information gathering, whether it be out of a main alongside that duelist to Pristine, versus in my mind, that's kind of a necessity here, because there are 3 sites on Lotus from your defensive approach. It's a great way to get information to gain space, so then the rest of your teammates can distribute between B and C if it's A, or, B and A if it's C, respectively. And then I also want to talk about, like you mentioned, the later down the line of this marathon is map 3, which is Utica's pick, is split. And I looked into my archives, and it's 4-1 for Northeastern. So definitely not a blemish on their record that Utica can exploit, but we are ready to jump into the game. We get the first look at these compositions, and it's exactly what I laid out before the break. Northeastern, the tried and true raise fade combination, versus we get that newer double initiator action of that Gecko breach, which does give me hope, because it is a more aggressive style, Nick.
It also opens up a lot more possibilities, considering, I mean, Gecko can just fill any slot, reuse abilities a lot more quicker, and even then can kind of get everything out in one fell swoop. So that Dizzy doesn't even have to go out towards Mound. That's just because you're facilitating aggression. We've seen back waterfall, Dizzy thrown up in the sky, where it comes right back into your hands. But that aggression that we just talked about is actually working out for Northeastern, because they say, hey, we'll take it with flying colors. We'll get at least ourselves 1 kill, and we'll take some control towards that seaside. Whether or not we hit it, that's completely debatable. But when we already got the space, why the heck not?
So Utica obviously starting on the defense, Northeastern on an attack, and they've taken this C site in stride, and an early attempt at a challenge from J-Del gets punished as well, meaning these numbers should have crumbled, but Pristine with a nice little deagle collapse puts them right back in the driver's seat on this retake. And this is where that breach utility as well comes into play, but a well-placed timing means that it's in the realm of possibility for Big Nate, the 1v2. It's planted for them, but again, all of this utility just used for crowd control at this point, and we'll have to see. They're just playing, and it doesn't matter. A 4K. All right, Pristine. I know I called you out before with the first bloods, but that was clean.
I mean, the collateral is definitely a way to open it up. I mean, sure, it comes more down to the actual likes of Northeastern lining that up, which is just mighty unfortunate. But even then, still, if there's any team that doesn't really care about a first round, a pistol especially, it's going to be these guys. They're going to buy up the sheriffs in the second one anyways. They're going to make things at least difficult. And even then, knowing kind of you get that blemish on your record, you get that scar in the back of your mind, knowing what happened at the first map. I like the fact Pristine is going ahead and investing a little bit larger. That could be a double-edged sword. That could work out great for him, especially if you do get those first initial kills. But if that happens to get inside the hands of these Northeastern players, things could get much, much more bloody.
I mean, the fact that they're headed towards this B site, yes, it's an eco strategy, yes, it's a typical response, but my concern is the positioning from Utica University puts them in the perfect place to choke out these players, to get them surrounded. Unfortunately, that paranoia kind of disrupts that plan for now, and the players on site are getting pressured, but they're responding in kind. Anchor draws the first blood, keeps these players at bay, minus the extension into top site, and into spawn? There's no way Wizard expects this. They do?
I mean, they heard the spike going off towards B. They knew it wasn't put down, so they're saying, are they faking it? And you got Anchor over towards that site letting you know that, okay, they're not here. I mean, they would have put it down already, or they would have put the pressure on me. So they're going somewhere else, quite frankly. Wizard has nowhere else. So look, well, behind them. Because if it was a double swing, that would have more likely actually would have been you dying in the process. So finally, the second round here for Utica wasn't just a singular player remaining at the end of it. It was a legitimate round win by them, and it seems like they had a good read of what was going on there, regardless of how unorthodox it seemed like Northeastern kind of brought to the table. So, I mean, good ideas. Nonetheless, I like the execution. I like the I like just kind of the whole process behind it. But there's a lot of stipulations that have to just kind of line up perfectly for something like that to work.
Yeah, and I mean, Utica, they got these first 2 rounds over on Ascent, and then that's when it started to fall apart. And it's evident here as well. Yes, Orca's full blind, but there's no punish just yet. So Henzo, although they find Orca, they get traded out, and it's still a numbers advantage here for Northeastern. And with the players now divided for Utica University, Wizard has to go for a hero play, or they have to respect the time needed to rotate from Pristine. And it looks like choice A is the gamble. And I'm surprised Northeastern doesn't punish it.
Yeah, I mean, with so much real estate already going ahead and being exerted towards the C site, you know it's only one player that can stop you really in the back, and that's going to be Pristine, already sitting on 51 HP. You know that it's pretty darn likely, so long as you just don't have your 2 most, I don't know, dead players, I'd say, kind of sitting towards back on mound. I mean, that player, you obviously want to have them playing a little more passive, not getting in the fray. You want to carry on as many of these guns as possible, so your Viper and Omen should be playing a little bit more forward, and that's exactly what they're doing. Playing for the trades, looking to keep those numbers up and at them, and looking to carry them on into the next. So a very, very clean round for Northeastern. And one thing I do want to pay attention to, the little chuckle that came out earlier, I love the fact that Jadel, like, just fully paranoid, isn't even blind spraying, just saying, hey, you know what, Dizzy, get out there. I mean, I pray you can just hit somebody, blind enough to get a trade, but it's just a last-ditch effort to say it's all I got. But regardless, though, Northeastern, it makes sense for them to finally be one of these rifle rounds. It's when they get a full kit. It's when they get everything to kind of line up for them. And this is where they say we have every single piece of utility to really just kind of go ahead and find it, clean execute.
Yeah, I mean, this is where they continue to expand upon that lead because of how flawless that second round has been for them historically. And with this first round, again, ending in a first blood from the lurk out of Nate, yes, it gets traded, or it doesn't get traded out. Oh my god, Ice Wizard's the one that got a frag from the lurking KJ. So A is still open for the taking.
And that's just going to be a From the Shadows already going ahead, TPing over on the site. You understand there's 2 players knocked out over there. Somebody was going ahead and sitting on that breakable door. More than likely, somebody's not on site because they wouldn't have answered from that angle anyway. So it was a good idea. And even then, just better reads on the side of Northeastern to understand really how this map was orchestrated. And better yet, what the default of Utica is looking like so far. This is showing their gaps. This is kind of exposing them a little bit more so. And purely because of this, they're having to pay the price of it. Not having the man advantage when it comes around to the retake, and even more so coming onto this A site. You have a player on the flank. That's going to be a lot of audibles to be given away when that door goes off to let you know that, okay, there's at least 2 in front of us, and probably the last one of that.
And so Nate, I mean, they're on par for an ace at this point. Not only were they lurking to open up the site, but then they held down the site. And unfortunately, an overextension to try and get that ace is punished by Wizards, so they're just collecting rifles where they can, saving what they can for the next round. But again, it's this complete shutout like we saw on Ascent once rifles were in the hands of Northeastern. So you can see, since that was technically their bonus, they still have plenty of money to rebuy rifles versus the side of Utica University. Worse for wear. Wizard, Hero Rifle, Viper's Pit. The rest going to be repping these Deagles, and I'm hoping they farm some orbs with this kind of trap play they have set up between Anchor and Pristine A main, just because we could see that Showstopper, steal a few frags away for the better.
Yeah, I just into this tie situation, seeing that there's a lot of players on the side of Northeastern that stood up and were just kind of still kicking on the back of the round two ago. It was just 4 players remaining is nothing to scoff at. It doesn't matter what the guns are looking like. It doesn't matter kind of how these rounds are panning out or what the situation may be. Leaving 4 alive, it's not unexcusable, but it's very, very dire. And you gotta understand how important it is in terms of the economy. Then it just really sets things in a very, very bad spot. I like the fact that Northeastern's going ahead, putting a nail in the coffin, not really freaking out too much about the universal kind of utility usage here, making sure that if they get an ultimate, kind of pan these things out. It's gonna be a long half. You're gonna get a couple more to work with, and especially your duelists. I mean, Ray's getting those showstoppers very, very common. You're not freaking out too much about it.
Oh my goodness.
The push coming up and a gun handed over, it makes this 2v2 look very, very feasible, especially with the showstopper available, and that's really the only thing we're left.
Yeah, but Pristine, I mean, there's not a lot of time to get the job done here. They just have to play Ring Around the Rosie, and while they find the shots, there's no time left. You can see Tempest using that Omen kit to save their weapon, while Pristine does not have the same kit available. They lose their life to the spike, they lose the round, and again, Northeastern, exact same thing we saw on Ascent, where they have claimed the lead after losing an initial pistol and buy up. So, I'm not gonna lie, I am a fan of early timeouts, albeit I know that means towards the later end of the half, you could be worse for wear, but once you're in this hole, I mean, you've already lost the first map, you're already losing these rounds. It's better to get ahead of the script before that chapter is closed, and where they have ultimates to work with, and again, a buy save cycle. It's making me a little nervous, Mick.
I mean, I'm definitely with you. I think it's the right call to kind of use it around this area of the half. Oh.
I mean, if you have a plan like that, I don't think you need one. But
I mean, is it even a plan? No spraying through. I mean, let's be real. That's luck to some degree. It's a read on some front. But, I mean, better yet, it's just that's unfortunate if you're on the side of Northeastern there. But all things considered, I mean, getting that first blood doesn't really matter all that much. Look at the numbers. They're not really playing anybody's advantage so far. The Viper's Pit is actually on that B side. So that kind of leans towards Northeastern's favor. If anything, they've made some great adaptations. They just haven't got the rotations behind it. Because INI's, I gotta say, hasn't really been putting as much work as we've seen during that Ascent match. Well, I mean, expect INI's to kind of lurk all over the place, do something weird, kind of be there, win him wherever. Has just been snuffed out over and over again. So in a 3v2 situation, you don't have that Viper sit to work with over there. Everybody was sitting on the outside of B, understandably now, knowing that A is where the real plant's going off. And, well, barely any kind of setup is available besides those 2 controllers. You're just relying on smokes here because, I mean, while you do have snake bites in the hands of Viper, you don't have them available.
And so for now, 2v2 devolves into a 2v1, and the trades from Enzo with a hero play barely gets the round in Utica University's favor. And again, those are small mistakes that can add up, and this time they barely scuff through. And, I mean, they had the read correct. They kept the numbers on that retake attempt, and then they just weren't able to keep track of where the Northeastern players were, where that wraparound backside was coming through. And that is a large cause for concern, and possibly because of that the initiators they're playing, right? There's no concrete info from these kits.
I think, honestly, I mean, Utica, that was a round that was a necessity to them, considering the kind of money, how things have been going, with these rounds not really looking too hot for them so far. Actually getting a clutch round, and obviously by none other than Henzo, who was that top fragger for number 1 on the side of Utica. But, I mean, for everybody else, so what does this really surmount to? I mean, Northeastern are finally on an eco round. I mean, that was the round that you necessarily extremely needed. I was saying, as you mentioned, that timeout. If it wasn't popped in that last round, it had to be popped in this one. Thankfully, they don't need that leniency. They don't need that time to figure stuff out. It looks like they're kind of starting to stabilize a little bit, and this is where we really, I think, can finally see this team wake up. Because in an eco round, every single time Northeastern has gotten Utica down to a singular player, this was a flawless. So this team is obviously waking up in some degree.
And definitely, they said, "All right, Zobi, we hear your cause for concern, your call for a timeout. We are going to refute it and start a streak of our own. Start re-improving, like you said, bounding here towards this second portion of the half." And yeah, I mean, now they're starting to get Northeastern on their toes. If they lose this round, they're going to be reset to a save. So Utica should be able to start expanding that lead as long as they win this round. And they have the ultimates to do it. I want to see more of a retake endeavor instead of this trap play towards Mound because they have the Rolling Thunder, because they have the Thrash. But we'll have to see if Jay, Dell, and the Henzo combo can get the job done here.
Like that. Playing towards Mound, making sure there's a little bit of support there. Considering, I mean, every single time that Haunt does get something, you find an initial push coming through out of that raise. Punish her if possible, find the relative numbers afterwards, and just kind of make this game work towards your favor. But in that same exact situation, well, what do you got going on there? What was missing earlier? Oh, the Dizzy. So obviously Gecko isn't here, right? Wrong. He is there, closes out 2, and puts yourself into a numbers advantage, while Utica, they have 2 ultimates still remaining, and that Nightfall already being invested didn't really do enough for you because A, you didn't wait it out, B, it was a little bit too deep, I'd say, and knowing that you got a lot more AoE to play with on this team, it's just free shots to go off for another round.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ultimates I wanted to see, and the fact that you can use one showstopper to get that round on the board is huge, because then you can save these other retake ultimates for future rounds in this half. And as I mentioned, Northeastern now going to be forced into a save, so you should be able to save it even further. So I'm expecting Utica University to not only lock in their 6th round, but then get a 7th or 8th. And I am a doubter on the fact that Lotus is an an attack-sided map, but if it truly is, then Utica University is set.
Yeah, I think honestly, I mean, Utica University, as we mentioned, the stabilization are just looking a lot better than what they typically did on that first map. I mean, maybe it could just be a stance of just warming up. Haven't really come into the lobby today, ready to roll, which now they've seemed to kind of get themselves together and really just comprise themselves. But I mean, looking at what they got to pull off right here, this is a round that obviously once more Northeastern, just where they can really make their comeback, where they can really make a stance. Because over and over again, we see these rounds, these kind of thrifties going their direction. And they've already capitalized so well off of it. Not going for that outright push towards that CSAT. I understand that. Let's go ahead and kind of close that distance. Omen always plays out, so let's just open the door and overwhelm these guys. And that should be C, free for the taking. And they're already there for the crossfire, helping out Ionize as well. But it's not going to do enough to keep them alive.
And that's one way to capitalize off of the slower rotating door speed. You bail your teammate out. You ensure that the round that I said was a little bit rough for wear in terms of the economy goes in your favor. I'm sorry, Utica University, if I just caster cursed you by saying you are definitely good for a 6th and possibly more, because Northeastern, the Huskies have definitely bitten back here. I mean, you're flawlessly, and yeah, Jingji and Ma in the corner doesn't get cleared. They're good for a 3rd. They're good for that 4th round for Northeastern, and that's going to be the economy, right? And their own ultimates coming online.
I think that I don't think you cast a curse. I still say they're good for a 6. You just didn't say when.
Timeout.
You didn't say that exact round, so I don't think it really applies just yet, because Utica still have everything necessary for a retake. That lockdown, whether used for a post plant or whether used more than likely for an actual engage, with a Thrash or Rolling Thunder, I mean, just there to guarantee yourself a 6, I mean, that's more than enough for a retake to kind of cover every single facet and angle of what a site has to offer. But Northeastern also then, they're instilling a little bit of confidence here in Utica. Taking this timeout when things really aren't in that bad or dire of a situation just yet is giving Utica really more time to also kind of collaborate here, kind of figure out what needs to go on and how they're going to use these 2 borders to really give themselves that edge to guarantee themselves a 6. Because I think that's the most important thing here is just finding that 6. In this late stance, you're locking yourself at 8 no matter what with the Northeastern's 4. So finding 6 puts Northeastern in the bad spot of saying, now we got to retaliate. We have to invest desperately in the case of a catch-up game, rather than just solidifying maybe one more.
That is true. And I think that's why Northeastern took this time out. You know, you might think, oh, we just shifted the momentum back in our favor. We need to expand upon it. But they recognize that they need more than just this next round. They need the next few rounds. They need the next 2 to ensure that they get a 6th or a 7th to have a similar outcome over on Ascent. And if they especially believe that Lotus is attack-sided, like I previously mentioned, then they definitely feel like they are doing terribly here. But at the end of the day, last round, a huge macro win. And now headed towards a pretty much deserted site as long as they clear out this corner where Wizard is hiding.
One thing I can already tell that they discussed a little bit was
no.
Ionize, you need to stay with the team. You need to be here as a fifth man. You need to play with the rest of the squad. And that's a player that hasn't just dropped unnecessarily. Orca now has a little bit more instilled confidence, has these Nano Swarm grenades to clear a couple angles for free. And even then, you see some good answers from everybody else, just going ahead and pitching in every single degree possible. Whether it comes down to pressing the X button or maybe going ahead and putting some more pressure towards the back of that site, regardless, you know that the real estate is yours. The Rolling Thunder's coming out. This is an investment that is insane from Utica and could pay off miracles for him, but still, with not enough actual gunfights going off the back of it, it's a lot of damage done to these two players remaining, and Northeastern can find themselves a very easy cleanup.
Yeah, but that's not all of that utility from the breach. The fault line connects, allows Henzo to isolate one after the other with Anchor as the bait. Anchor gets the defuse, and Utica University locks in that sixth as foretold. And it was just really funny to see Northeastern, right? They took the site so gracefully, and then as soon as the plant went down, they kind of couldn't tell that Pristine had died in the snake bite, so that rocket fuse expiring without finding an impact meant that was a huge ultimate to use to come up with nothing. And albeit it was an interesting investment of the Rolling Thunder. I mean, you're down one player, you're up against the wall in terms of the timer. It definitely shows how powerful that breach is in a retake scenario on the defense for Lotus. So 6-4 weapons for both squads. The only silver lining here is that Operator could act as a surprise element, but for now it's only going to pick off again Ionize with a single player lurk.
Once again, here comes Ionize. Finally, once again, kind of starting to wake up a little bit. This is, I think, quite frankly, the star player. Your game plan, for the most part, Northeastern's front really comes down to whether or not Ionize stays alive or gets shut down, because that's your entire flank watch. That's a player not only just kind of watching flank, like maybe what you would have as Cypher in this map sometimes, who just kind of throws that stuff down and can play with the team because it's global. But the KJ, if it goes down, it's a little bit aggressive. That player's pushing up constantly, and if you lose them, there goes all your flank watch. There goes a fifth man, and even then more so, I like it when it's ever actually being pushed up, because that's a Nano Swarm grenade that is, as we saw earlier in that last round, for a very, very clean initial take, was a Nano Swarm grenade that could clear these angles. But finally, going ahead and kind of congregating once more, kind of collaborating, and once again, getting onto this A site. I like the ideas, at least in terms of the approach, but the investment is another discussion.
That is true. And I mentioned during Aiden Select that I was going to be concerned with Utica University and some of these early round plays, but I mean, specifically the get-go, you know, they've been doing a really good job of winning those initial engagements, Jadal getting numbers advantage, or at least an equal scenario. But the investment of both this lockdown and this Viper's Pit for Northeastern makes this a really difficult scenario. They have the turret as well to play contact here, so they can tuck away in the tree. The only thing that might help out is the failed geometry of a snake fight and the possible wingman. But even then, I mean, they still haven't stuck the spike, and wingman was used instead for forward pressure.
One
this
enemy remaining.
Okay, what?
No way!
Okay, Jadel.
Yeah, there's time. But I mean,
Barely.
just still, understandably so. I mean, holding that angle, everything makes sense for Northeastern. Just kind of play that thing out. I mean, there's a lot of questions to be asked, and sure, you're in these 2v2 situations, and even in these dynamic duos, you're not typically used to working with each other. I mean, a Viper and a KJ, that's not really a duo you're expecting to kind of be alive and kind of work on those one-on-one interactions with. It's more so like, say you're a duelist and you're Initiator, or you're Initiator and seemingly anybody, just because they can really do it all. But knowing these kind of circumstances and how it was the exact same kind of thing, Utica, they understood they had a little bit more to work with. They had the Dizzy. I'm with you, though. The wingman, why not throw the thing on the spike and just spray out afterwards? But, I mean, regardless, Jade probably just won the kills, and, well, it worked out for him. But one thing that isn't working so far is the start of this round. Northeastern seemingly ticked off about the last one, and they found themselves initial 2 for whatever weapon upgrades could be off the back of it. But knowing those kills are there, you need to press W key onto that B side as fast as possible. And it seems like they got the Nemo a little bit late, but they're still there nonetheless.
True. And so now B-site taken, Wizard not in position to contest early on since there already is a numbers disadvantage for the squad. They have to rely on this flank pressure to deal with Ionize to level the playing field, and they have done just that. Jaydel on a tear here, trying to ensure an even larger lead for Utica University. With it being the last round, might as well throw all of these ults into the mix. Pit invested to try and force the hand, and it does just that. The playing field even, but Shima, and it's not enough vulnerability for Jaydel to get a second 4K in a row on the board to fulfill my prediction of a 7 or 8-4. Half this game, this map for Utica University.
I mean, we mentioned Henzo in that last map being the top fragger, being that player for Utica to keep some relevancy, but if it's Jade at the lead, well, it's going to be an actual lead. That's the difference here going on so far. I mean, sure, KO can do some things on Ascent, but a Gecko in every map feels like he can literally do it all. But if he's able to frag like that, very consistently, getting everything necessary, and especially when you look at your controller, just creating all those assists. I mean, look at those numbers by Wizard in this game so far. Pitching in what feels like every single kill. And Pristine going ahead and carrying and being just the facilitator of those early rounds. It's an outstanding half for Utica to finally go ahead and be jumping with joy and get some energy back in their system after that first map loss. So they look like they have a chance here. They obviously have a lot more to go, but on this attacking side and having all the aggression, having this utility that is seemingly just reusable over and over again. And we talk about the fault line, the Dizzy that's available. I mean, everything's lining up here to, quite frankly, just push W key for free almost anywhere. Where Northeastern, I feel they're just going to be playing the retake for this entire half.
I mean, I feel like the retake composition is for Utica University. I feel like exactly what Northeastern is doing is what their comp is equipped for. These trap plays towards this particular area, and you can set up a high-low with the Shrouded Step, the Raise Nade for crowd control, and it completely stalls out any A execute. It draws First Blood and forces the hand towards this Killjoy setup, towards, as you mentioned, that star player of Ionize on...
Quite frankly, realistically, Utica have everything. I mean, while it works for the retake, it works just as good for the actual plants initially because it's just that aggression that is facilitated by so much utility off the back of it. But Northeastern, I mean, they gave themselves some breathing room. Even then, taking a second to pause and understand, oh my, what a cleanup. Easy little kills there. I mean, just lining up for each other. Waterfall completely open and a lot of kills off the back of that. Makes an easy fifth here for them. But that's just the pistol round. The one after is what really matters because they're going to be buying things up. They don't really have the same amount of money because they're not on the attacking side and getting those extra 300 creds. But they're still going to make a pretty big investment nonetheless. And we did see the Outlaw come into play. But opting in for something different, it makes sense. Don't really go crazy here because even then Utica, as we can see and have the pleasure and benefit of looking at, is that they're going up for a force of their own. So this could be a kind of element of surprise that just really sets the tone, knowing that, I mean, they're going to press the W key this entire half, and you got to kind of punish them for it. I mean, we talked about that KJ, that Ionize. Those Nanos forms have to do the damage, have to trip things up, have to create the element of chaos. Otherwise, Utica just are going to feel like a tsunami wave.
I mean, again, though, it's been one pistol apiece for both of these maps now. And again, I like to support pressure from Northeastern. It's gotten them First Blood. It's denied straight fire. Sight takes. This round, it feels like Utica wants to disrespect it. I mean, all of this utility set up as soon as that one-way dark cover fades. But look at the counter already from Orca, even though the paranoia is in. Can't really disrespect a paint shell unless you have satchels, but then Tempest is there with the equal counter. A perfect rebound lands as well, so they're just going to keep challenging, keep stealing frags until the force here from Utica, that Spectre and that Stinger, hit hard, and now suddenly we're even on a 2-on-2, Mick.
That was a lineup too. So long as the shot was there, at least for a second, you're getting a lot of free damage off the back of that, but not really too concerned just yet. I know the Bulldog in the hands of these Northeastern players looking at this retake, and even then, may be able to scavenge this thing up. There goes Henzo, scavenging the one that was dropped and just being ready for any other player, just kind of lurking about, ready to take the fights one by one for a very, very clean 4K off the back of this round. Sure, taking a little bit of damage, but a dub nonetheless, sitting at that 9-5. So already, Utica opened up this half, answering very, very quickly and warranting that purchase that came through the last one, saying that it's not a force if you win, it's just, well, better guns for the next one.
Very, very true. So, I mean, with that first up, Utica stop the potential uh, Flutteride that Northeastern would have been taking into a tied scoreline. So a 9-5 can continue forward. Going to be bonusing those heavier invested weapons to save for Northeastern. Have to see. I mean, it's interesting how they're going back to that mentality they had on Ascent, where they're waiting for these trap plays, these creative expeditions Northeastern could be taking, but Northeastern never does.
I mean, I'm even then just surprised that Utica are taking this one slow. Knowing that Northeastern don't really have buys to work with, knowing that they just scavenge up the rest of their guns that was available and the money just is not there for them, they're giving these guys a lot of respect. And they're just expecting maybe some of these kind of crazy eco spots to be whipped out, and you never know if a Bucky's going to be held in a corner.
There.
I mean, sure, it's always a constant concern. You can see the pings coming through saying, I mean, somebody's probably close to water. But, I mean, it just comes down to the point of, you got plenty of stuff to flush them out. So, go ahead and do just that. And, well, it takes them a little bit of time, but they get it done.
Target destroyed.
So now Seaside taken, Ionize in position to
30
punish,
seconds
but
left.
timing does not connect. Tenzo able to secure that first blood, and now they're going to try and coordinate with the rest of the team here to potentially extend towards one of these retake avenues. Looks like thus far has not been a leap taken. They're going to be forced to eventually, especially with these frags and Tempest, they just try to step right in. They get the weapon connection, but again, it's J-Del managing the chaos. And I don't know how J-Del just keeps doing it.
It's just that point to where, as I mentioned on the attacking side, I don't know if they really need to give all this respect over to Northeastern. I mean, they've had some great attempts so far, but literally you can just throw Wingman into the fray there and just give him the spike and say, just run it down, little guy, and get that spike down, because worst case, spike is there, but you got more than enough to kind of go ahead and retake. You get a little bit of information off the audibles, off that utility being invested there to kind of understand that, well, now this site becomes that much more open. Sure, retake will be cubed, but with what guns, realistically? I mean, Northeastern, they haven't really been firing on all cylinders on these Thrifties. They found one on the attacking side, but they don't have that luxury of creativity anymore. They just have to really play with what they got and work to the confines that Utica set. So, speaking of those confines, they want to bring them over to the seaside once more. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we're going to see a repeat on it once more, but now full guns, and it seemingly doesn't really do too much because still, Pristine is here and playing.
Now, I mean, Orca 1v4. At this point, you have to consider saving or seeing what economic damage you can do. But even then, that'll be a Utica 11th round. So you hope for a Hail Mary, and it just will not land. Utica 11th round here. Trying to go blow for blow, stealing away Northeastern's map pick now here on Lotus. And what did I say? You can go from 13-5ing, 13-6ing a team to having the same thing happen to you. That's been a common thread with these squads throughout the Champions Division, and it looks like to be a common thread thus far this best-of-5 grand finals, Mick.
Yeah, I mean, what an answer coming out here from Utica so far. I mean, sitting at not only just 10, I mean, people talk about the 9-3 curse, so there's a checkpoint at 9. People, I like to go ahead and mention the kind of checkpoint chokehold at the double digits. And, well, they've already passed that once more. Now sitting at 11, 2 rounds and, 6 rounds of a differential. You can just go ahead and invest things and say run it down just to get the sake of 1 round on the board, and we go to the overtime worst-case scenario. But already, I mean, Utica, I don't think they're going to find that pressure. I don't think they're going to find that problem presented to them. I think they can genuinely just secure these rounds and close out this map, knowing that the kind of pressure they have to work with, knowing the kind of utility that's there and available. We've seen that not only has Jade been excelling in just winning these gunfights, I'm sorry if I cast or cursed you there, but just knowing that the rest of their team can follow off that essentially for free, because Jade's been a one-man army so far on this attacking side, being able to plant, being able to clutch, being able to retake. I mean, what really more do you need?
I mean, even when they fall, the rest of the team, Wizard, Pristine, have been definitely picking up the slack here compared to Ascent. I mean, sometimes you are just a Raze instead of a Jet player, as Pristine has made evident, and the cycling of this showstopper has been also a factor in their success. I mean, they have it online here again for an opportunity to close out this map, to close out Lotus. We'll just have to see if, again, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They want to head potentially here towards A off the Wizard Lurk, or if they're going to challenge head-on this 3-person stack that's culminating over from Northeastern on Mound on the C site. My question is, can they win out that fight when you have yeah, your losses invested in side back.
Really can't blame them. I mean, considering the 12-5 so far in a round like this, I mean, Utica understand that we don't need to be taking unnecessary fights. Let's look to close this thing out. Let's see if this one way, I mean, sure, it's not going to work out too well for us, but I mean, Northeastern are desperate. So let's give them this space. Let's just kind of chill back towards spawn a little bit. Wait for them to make a move because they have to be the ones to do that. The ball is in our court, but they're the ones trying to rob it from our hands currently, and that's a much, much more difficult situation to do, considering that anything gives positions away. So already, that boombot coming out lets you know that somebody's still mount. That's a fight still to be taken, and with the kind of guns you have to work with, it's more than likely going to go in your favor. Regardless of the fight that's still going on at C, A has players too. They didn't even have the entire roster towards that mound, and they were still taking even, or better yet, winning fights, which allows them just free real estate if they want to go somewhere else, because now all the attention's been diverted towards the opposite side of the map.
Now
30 seconds left.
4v3 favorites. The B site, but that's right into Qingtian Ma, who gets full blinded and traded out by Anchor. So ionized again, the proclaimed hero for the Northeastern squad in the 1v3. Henzo has the read and has the frag. So 13-5 here. Utica will tie us up here in the Champions Grand Finals. Best of 5. Just a great turnaround, especially when I said a mentality game from losing your map pick at the series start can definitely be a worm that eats away. And they just use it as a learning point. They use it to adjust, to grow, and counter back.
I mean, a couple things just proven by us, obviously. I mean, considering we did have concerns there for Northeastern, just kind of running things here. But a 13-5 on their map pick is just as bad as seeing a kind of 13 anything on Ascent when it's your selection. So knowing that, I'm happy to know that Utica, it seemed like that first map, I mean, while obviously the entire pool of variables you have to work with isn't the most wide thing on the planet for us to kind of be taking into this exact circumstance, this exact moment. But knowing that, well, they did kind of wake up there. They were able to play the game. It felt like a couple attributes. Well, obviously, A, you had 3 players that were just frying like nobody's business. But also, secondly, you had, well, what I feel like we mentioned earlier was that composition differential. Having that fade compared to that Gecko, it feels like Gecko just, there's nothing this man can't do. And while you have JDL specifically on that character, JDL obviously didn't really have the game of a lifetime on Ascent, but still, when you're not really relying on, okay, I gotta do this and I gotta do that, as a Sova, you kind of feel like an administrator to some degree. You're always doing something, you're setting stuff up, you're giving your team these recons, you're giving your team this information, these shocks, or you're ulting and you can't really shoot anymore. When you're playing Gecko, you're saying, I'm doing all this while actively shooting, while being inside these gunfights. And after seeing the performance on this map, they were missing him in map 1, quite frankly. So, I mean, if you keep on putting him on Gecko and keep on putting a gun in this man's hand, I'm excited to see really how that can continue over the course of the series, whether or not that really remains to be consistent.
Well, for me, it's just interesting how map 1, both MVPs were those KOs, were those initiators. Now here on Lotus, it is the Omens, it's those controllers, since both teams were running a double controller. And now as we head into Split, my question becomes, all right, who's going to take the cake here? It's a very unique map where usually the Raze is kind of the one in the spotlight with those entries, with closing the distance here on ramps or satcheling into his site. But we'll have to see. I mean, again, it is Utica's pick. But the record speaks for itself for Northeastern being 4-1 on this map. My other kind of thing to point out, though, is it has only been played slightly by Utica, so they might be harboring an unknown, especially since they've played it twice, won it once, lost it once. One was with a little bit of a meme comp, and one was with a more realistic composition, so we might not know what we're going to see out of that squad.
You said harboring a comp, so maybe...
No,
maybe there's hope. It sounds like a troll, but as a harbor mate, if you're good enough, you can squeeze them in anywhere.
If we make it to Icebox, I'll promise you a harbor potentially. Because I see the comps from the team.
We'll see whether or not they want to come out with some troll picks or how spicy they really want to get. But we'll see it on the other side of this break. We'll catch you then with map number 3. The Lotus done and dusted. We're moving on to map number 3 here. Likes of Utica versus Northeastern, not really going the way we expected after map number 1, because guess what? Both teams apparently have now woken up. So hopefully we should get ourselves a much closer score margin compared to those first 2 maps. Betting on a map that we don't really expect too much being split on this next one. An interesting map to say the least. Something we usually see these score differentials kind of sitting a little bit further apart. But I think honestly, if today's anything to go by, honestly, we can't look at regular patterns anymore.
That is a great way to put it. But I'm a color caster. I'm an analyst, Mick. I gotta live by my patterns to some degree, and what we're lined up for here is kind of a flip flop. I feel like of what we saw on Lotus. The more aggressive comp potentially going to be run by Northeastern with their double initiator variation of a breach sky, if it's the proper players lining up. That is, since I said I have their like 7-man compositions in mind. Versus, a double controller potentially in the mix alone, coupled with a sentinel pick as well. So a very strong defense approach here, potentially out of Utica University Varsity A. But like you said, no patterns. These teams can throw out whatever they want. And with players, stepping up and being that MVP across the board, I wouldn't be surprised if a team says, maybe today is the day for a double duelist on Split.
It really comes down even then, gambling of which player is going to be that one. I think we're going to see the same exact setups in terms of the duelists as what we saw on that last map, at least in terms of who's allocated to be on that dedicated arrays. But the rest of the team is really what feels like a bit of a wild card, because I think, quite frankly, that Sentinel pick, as you mentioned, Ionize has been a player of mine that's been kind of lurking not only around the map, but in the back of my head in terms of performances. Outstanding on that first map of Ascent, always keeping that mid-control under wraps and able to kind of go ahead and win out those gunfights, but really just wasn't present on that second map of Lotus. A lot of those attacking rounds was kind of fumbled. You gave a first blood over. The flank control was completely given up at that point, and quite frankly, the rest of the map just seemed to collapse from every single angle around Northeastern. But knowing that even then, that was also off the back of a couple more players. We talk about even then Jaden, and just those two already, I think, honestly have the most potential in terms of teams. Christine, obviously being disgusting in that last map, playing the Rays correctly, being that top frag for the team for the majority of the game, outstanding assists coming through from that Viper. Like I said, feeling like you had some level of effort in every single kill over the course of that map, which is kind of expected of a Viper on Lotus of all places. But,
True.
Just knowing that is that same exact kind of ideology. Are the guns going to be in hand just as actively as what we saw there? Because Gecko, we see kind of being a little bit of an iffy selection here. Can be used, not necessarily, though. And honestly, the Sky is more kind of opted for here. So I want to know whether or not we actually see Utica do that same thing. Take that same approach. Say, look, we need to have guns in hand. Let's go with the Breach. Let's go with the Gecko. It kind of offers that same aggression, but do we have just as much to work with? Do we have just as much uptime of these guns? Because Sky feels a lot more kind of like your typical, run-of-the-mill initiator, where you are doing more setup than actually fighting.
Wait, but we're jumping into Agent Select, and I called it the meme composition because that's what I expected when I saw this squad pull it out in the group stage, but they have actually made a return of the triple duelist double controller here for the Utica side. I said
That's
maybe
crazy.
a double duelist could work for the players that have been online, but this is just something else, and we're already into the action of the game here, and I cannot wait to see it work, especially since they're the ones starting out on the attack here on Blitz. And we even see a change actually out of mainly the Ash pickup, which might be because they want more of a fight hold. Now Ionize receiving out of a lot of pressure, and they have been overwhelmed by it, Mick.
You mentioned the pseudo sentinel. The one thing that's also pseudo is going to be that Yoru playing as a pseudo duelist, kind of like an initiator to some degree, having those flashes on hand. So your Sky isn't constantly having to worry about that uptime and trying to make those trades because, well, you don't have a Sky. That is technically your initiator. So it's easy to kind of get all the jobs done with all the decoys available, all the flashes on hand, and knowing that even then, all the players that are available for you as well, it's the teammates to close out the first round for Utica as they found themselves a very aggressive start. You mentioned kind of a troll pick or a little bit an interesting comp to say the least, but I gotta say it's not only just the fact that obviously Yoru fills in that role of a duelist and an initiator simultaneously, but it's the fact that if there was anybody that you would kind of go for a pseudo situation, Usually on this map, it's KO, right? I mean, KO can kind of still do that same thing. Has a lot more kind of just universal utility, kind of with the information and getting the flashes off. I gotta see Yoru here. I mean, this is something that's going to be a complete, utter surprise to me because it's not just this team in general. It is just this pick overall because we barely got to see it on Bind until like this past year. Now we get even more to work with because, well, Split could be feasible.
I mean, at this point, Pristine's just trying to play every duelist in the book. I mean, 3 maps, 3 different duelists at this point. And I mean, so far, the best success they've found in terms of site executions, albeit because it's a little bit deserted by Northeastern. So let's see how the retake will fare when they have 5 members alive.
Yeah, just looking for any real estate here. I mean, already going ahead and exerting a lot of pressure here towards the back of that side, able to go ahead and make use of these guns in hand. But still taking some relative sacrifice. Ionize being the last one sitting. We always talk about the flanks coming out from this player. With nothing but a classic in hand, there's not really too much you can do there. So not the biggest stress in the world. I mean, it's the second round. You cut off 2 guns. You're happy with the result there. But Utica are also happy with at least the player that did die, Pristine, being that Yoru able to farm not only kills, but also farm orbs simultaneously. You get a 3-dimensional drift for round number 3, which is honestly is a free setup for any swings and overwhelming kind of kills you want to take. You get a couple free guns to make that domino effect come into play.
That is very, very true. And so now, I mean, this round, again, Utica, they've been very consistent about getting these first 2 rounds on the board. It's been that 3rd round conversion of that buy-up and the subsequent rifle rounds that have more issues. So I'm interested to see if it's going to work out for them. And thus far, the 1-for-1 trade shows that there is hope.
I mean, looking to squeak anything out, quite frankly. I mean, Utica still outstanding efforts from them. I mean, Northeastern, I'm surprised you're not respecting this space. You have the guns, you have the lineups, you have the distance and the range of your arsenal to excel in these just kind of one-ways. But they're just not taking them. They're bringing the fight to Utica, thinking they had somewhat of a curveball, somewhat of a surprise element there, but they have done nothing but just shoot themselves not only in the foot, but a couple of their players in the head, just giving these things over one by one. So it comes down to Ionize once more. Can't really get the job done. With 2 players remaining, Utica find themselves a 3rd simultaneously. And it doesn't matter how many players live on this round, so long as you have any, that is insane here for a start on that squad.
Finally, that 3rd round converted. It's gotta feel like a step in the right direction for Utica University. I mean, not only do they reset the economy, so it should be another blowout of a round, but then again, we've seen some creative thirsties come out from Northeastern. And albeit Utica University, what they normally do is they sit back and wait for these creative trap plays. This round with these ults online like the Dimensional Drift, I see no signs of that. They're going to get that early information, spot out any of these trap plays, figure out where Cypher utility is, figure out where players are, and show that A is pretty much deserted.
I mean, just seeing the way things are playing out so far, I mean, even in Northeastern, if there is a team that we're going to see pull up a Thrifty, it would be this one. They've always made things very close of a margin when they get these sheriffs in hand, but they also got to get the placements. And Ascent is a map to where everybody knows it. So you can kind of squeak your way around, find yourself these favorable angles, and get yourself in these positions. But Split, while it is close quarters, while it is hectic, it's a lot more difficult to still get the thing done. But it comes down to who's alive when you want to really get these setups. And having a breach and having a raise, what better dynamic duo, quite frankly? I mean, so much to play off the back of, but when you don't have the lineup and you see barely the top of Omen's hood compared to the 2 faces staring at you, it's a lot more tempting to nail those shots on heaven.
I mean, that just felt like the most anticlimactic duel. I mean, you have the better weapon since they hadn't really picked up those upgrades just yet from the Northeastern squad. And I thought for a second we were going to see a Northeastern Thrifty, but in retrospect, planning for heaven, repivot from anchor, all of it lines up, and they're left to clutch out, where when you're on for an 8-1 KDA at the moment, of course you're going to win those. So
Yeah.
a 4-0 dominance so far for Utica University as they head into the next
7,400.
rifle round. And I feel like they're just going A-B, nothing's stopping them there.
What a charitable individual, too. I mean, so much money, so many kills. It's like, why not just go ahead and spread the love? Just go ahead and buy somebody else up. I mean, sustain this economy for the rest of the squad. Because obviously, it is not a problem for you. I mean, free pushes on the site. We are seeing Utica absolutely run this map. And while, sure, it does come down to some degree, we could say, well, the composition helps. You're seeing an Omen every single time anyways, and Omen being the fragger, well, obviously is really just doing what it's supposed to do. So Anchor once again anchoring this entire map, doing what they do best. 2 more on the round, and in a 1v4 situation, INI's already invested in their ult theft. You're in a situation where you're saying, oh my god, I know where they are, but can I really fight this?
I mean, at this point, have your team run a 5 duelist composition. I mean, when you have 3 duelists and your Omen is top fragging, that says something. And 5-0 on a map that I said was 4-1 in the records for Northeastern, yeah, you need to take that early timeout. But I mean, it's not even early because we're already almost halfway through the first half.
Yeah. It's that point. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, Omen honestly does even feel like we've seen a shift of not just the actual, obviously, Omen's always had the same kit. Omen hasn't really changed much with the test of time. If anything, he's gotten worse for this duelist mentality because of the paranoia and how sometimes it travels slower or faster depending on whether you're moving backwards or forwards. But honestly, we've seen a mentality of Omen players shift over from what would be just your regular controller to honestly literally feeling like what Clove is right now. To where the players have just said, I'm not sitting back anymore. I'm setting up these one-ways, not only just for my team, but for myself. And after seeing some of the most notorious players and internationally now hopping on this character, you're saying, well, he's basically a duelist now. And which is just insane to think because, honestly, this Viper, I haven't really felt the effect too much of this Viper on the attacking side. It feels like they never get to a point of actually utilizing a post plant where that pressure, where that slowdown of a Viper really takes effect. It just feels like you're just here to plant the spike. You're basically a wingman for our team, and we're all just going to press W.
And yeah, we'll call it the tens effect, what you mentioned about these players switching over to a more aggressive approach on the Omen. And when you're running a double controller composition like Utica University is, then yeah, you're okay with that. You know your team's not going to be out smokes, similar to, like you said, Clove, when they can smoke from the grave. So they can be more aggressive and leverage that, you know, unique kit of the Shrouded Step from the shadows. But now, I mean, Utica University recognizing they were jumping from A to B and know that Northeastern might be trying to pinpoint and act that timeout. They're getting creative. They're going for this mid position, but pristine. That is PC check on Isle.
Yeah, Northeastern is. They're feeling it now. That is just unfortunate.
Last player standing.
I mean, that's just even more unfortunate. They don't even need to plant anymore, Mick.
I mean, it's 5-0. What more do you want out of Utica? I mean, a flawless sure is great. Guarantee yourself an even half worst case, but I mean, we can't look at worst case. I mean, right? It's a matter of perspective at this point, and there's no way. Maybe Caster cursing it here. Obviously, Utica fans can come after me if this does come out to a 6-6, but Northeastern, if there's a time to wake up, obviously, I would say call a timeout and do it right here. You have 5 ultimates, you got time, but we've already seen that invested earlier, so we can't, obviously.
Yeah, they already took a timeout.
But it's just the matter of still, it's like, I got it. I understood earlier, but now things are really, really dire. Things are really hitting hard. And honestly, if consider that timeout didn't work for that exact round, I think surely you hold out hope and say, maybe they were discussing this one when they had a lot more to work with, because you knew that neural theft wasn't going to be aligned with everything else after that 1v4 situation that was burned.
Oh,
there it is.
Unfortunately, INI is still striking here from screens. And there it is, the showstopper to try and counter that rolling thunder. But you know who else has a showstopper?
So
Orca. And this pinch, this crunch will get the first round on the board for Northeastern. I mean, you mentioned it, all those ultimates might as well invest them. But if it takes 3 ultimates for you to get a round on the board, you're not in for a fun ride for the rest of this half. Because you just used them all.
Come on, let's not be a Debbie Downer. Northeastern's on the board. Northeastern's on the board, baby. We're back. This game ain't chalk just yet. This is doable. I mean, realistically, though, we talk about round thresholds. We talk about the bare minimum. 3 is all you really need. So, quite frankly, I mean, there's still a lot left to this half. I mean, sure, it feels like we're already kind of in the point where this round or this half could be over purely because we were looking at a 6-0. But it really puts things into perspective when you say that 6-1, there's definitely a good bit of this half still remaining. And having so many players remaining on the back of that round means the economy, sure, you invested as ultimates, but the guns are still available. They are still there, and they finally get themselves somewhere where Utica's put in a situation to where, I mean, we saw them already slow down against Northeastern's ecos. After winning a singular round, that's going to at least change up the pace a little bit and make them slow down and say, okay, they are shooting back.
I mean, yeah, they've taken all this Like, they've slowed down, but they're still claiming so much space here because
Yeah.
of how far back Xingqian Ma is playing. Instead of playing for that Rams control, they're playing for Heaven control. And with the Snakebite Paint Shell combo coming in, you have to respect that. And, I mean, all this utility at this point isn't finding any frags thus far.
Right. I mean, still some good trades though, nonetheless.
down
But
A.
obviously, Utica University having a little bit heavier of a player allocation towards that heaven area of the map. They're going to find themselves a couple kills. No real trades coming out from Iron Eyes because you're deadly concerned with who may be kind of around the corner. And, well, you make sure to kind of get that trade off where it's worth it. Find the kills there, get the neural theft off the back of it, understand who else may be there, and thankfully the rest of your team is there to capitalize off the back of it. So it comes down to Pristine and Anchor. And while Pristine, sure, being good, being alive, you have that initiator, that pseudo duels to kind of get yourself on the site. Problem is that Spike is on site, being held hostage. But the biggest deal is that Anchor is alive, and that's your problem.
And now the 1v1 through the smoke.
Was it?
They predict the position. I want to say it was, and we don't have replays, so that's up to the spectator's eye. But from my perspective, that Astra smoke was blocking it, unless it was like an elbow or something. But
Oh, you said
regardless-
1v1. I was thinking more of a one-sided affair. That was
Yeah.
just...
I mean, yeah, 12-2, Anchor upsetting all of the duelists here, needless to say. But you said it before, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I want to focus on the things Northeastern is doing well, right?
Yeah.
And Ionized there specifically, they adjusted their cipher trips to counter, to lock down that site so well and buy just enough time for the team to rotate. It was unfortunate, though, that those players not having control was what really won the round for Utica, because then they got the wrap
Right.
around on the screens players and made it that 1v1 that obviously Anchor on a hot streak's gonna win.
Yeah, just really going to see what else Northeast are going to pull out here. I mean, considering they did defend themselves at least one more round on the board. But, I mean, off the back of that round, things just aren't looking too hot for them. Losing into the one, I mean, just going right back, that kind of ditch that happens with the economy to where you win one by the grit of your teeth, and the next, you're just, okay, was it really worth it, quite frankly? And you have to keep the mentality of, it was. You got on the board. 12-0, I mean, good God, you're just really calling this thing done. So thankfully, can get something, can find a good cross, and better yet, can react to maybe what is being provided on site. But issue is, Utica are just a little bit faster to the cut. They always understand these fights, and Henzo is literally one shot, and you gave him another one.
Had 4 bullets in the magazine, and they have the confidence to swing
Spike
that.
planted.
I mean, yeah, you know, there's no other player that's going to take that trade because the Boombot's actively clearing it.
Right.
The fact that they're still alive here is just insane. Ionized, fortunately, able
There's
to
that lurker.
steal one away, get a weapon upgrade,
ultimate
and
isn't
that makes
ready.
things a 2v1. But even then, I mean, they have a showstopper, a rocket in their back pocket if things get dicey, and I'm expecting a double swing here, regardless. From behind pillar, they have no information about where Henzo is, and with gate crashes in the mix as well, Pristine could reposition at any moment. So it's uncertainty that'll lead to an 8th round here for Utica University Varsity on Split.
I'd like to even then kind of see the available utility that was in Pristine's pocket during that exact situation as well, whether or not a decoy was there to pop or maybe another flash. I mean, a gate crash. I mean, just anything to work with there will be enough to kind of go ahead and alleviate that attention of that ionized player, of that cipher, to the point to where you find yourself maybe a free kill. But even then, still, an outright 1v1 when your team is down 1-8, it feels like those fights just aren't winnable just from a mental standpoint, which, as much as it sucks to say, it's just a reality of the situation. In Utica, they're just capitalizing off the back of that. Having another round where they're sitting at 8-1 now on the board, as I just mentioned prior. They have 4 ultimates to play with here because they've just been winning so many gunfights outright. They've been reaccumulating these ultimates on such a consistent, like, speed run type basis that, well, they can just farm whatever. They can go for whatever. They can play this game at their own pace because, well, they have everything to play
Oh,
with.
the judge! I mean, yeah, Tempest, you have a strategy to capitalize on that choke point with the judge and a dimensional drift that wasn't even online yet. Gonna put a quick stop to that. And now, I mean, when you have this confidence, this ego building up from an 8-1 lead, of course you're gonna extend into CT, which is gonna be the perfect counter here potentially to any hero plays. Showstopper dropped, but so is Henzo. So again, Ionized giving a glimmer of hope here to the Northeastern squad, but there's so much utility that hasn't been tapped into for Utica University, so they can delay with the paranoia, they can delay
enemy
this
remaining.
utility. With that cage up, the stick's coming through, it's not at the right angle, they've stuck it all the way, and
There you go.
suddenly for Northeastern might be the hope that they
Make sure
need
to follow my
to get like an
copy.
8-4
The
to
lead's right
salvage this half.
Hey, hands up! All you need is 3. All you need is 3. You are 2/3 of the way to saying, okay, we had a half. But 10-2, obviously not really what you want. And even then, quite frankly, Utica, pretty impressive considering that they even then had the discipline to not really go all out with their ultimates. I mean, obviously, from the shadows, you're a little bit more questionable about the Blade Storm. You're popping really more on Nico. That may not even be touched this half, quite frankly. But, I mean, seeing the way that Utica was playing that round, the Viper's Pit was the only thing you were really looking for. And even then, I can't blame them. That the Viper has just been so slow compared to the rest of this team that you just don't really feel like you can do anything. To where if you get caught out, everybody else is pressing W and you're so far behind in that race, they have to literally put themselves into reverse to go back and make up for that singular individual. So that's just if a single player slips through the crack. That's Northeastern's game plan, I think, is to honestly suffocate this team. Cut them off by the tail, and then before they really know it, that's whenever they're starting to really hemorrhage those players.
And I mean, with how much presence they have at different portions of the map at the moment, Guiding Light's going to keep these players towards the A site.
Right.
And there's such a deep mid control as well from Henzo and Anchor 2D. They've definitely kind of split the forces of Northeastern as thin as they can be. The question is, where will the reads lie? Where will the calls go? And thus far, it's been leaning towards a B site. And with a frag for JDL, they recognize they have to scramble towards A. But at this point, it's too late.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, already so many players cut down. You're sitting in a 2v5 situation. Neural Theft is available, but you don't want to use it in a round like this. You're hoping to invest it for the next one, but even then, that's too much of a gamble because you don't know whether or not players going to live. Because this round is already done and dusted. Right behind you, you're sitting at 9 for Utica, so Northwestern, you know you are locked out at 3 no matter what, which isn't the worst case, as I mentioned. You found 2 of those rounds, but this is detrimental here. This is a kind of an all-or-nothing situation because, sure, 9-3, thankfully, we've had the curse from the start of the game to give us that perspective of it is always doable. It's a very big deficit, but it always makes it look feasible. 10-2, though, I mean, I got to say in my career of casting for the past 2 years, I've maybe seen 3 or 4 10-2 comebacks. So the percentage just does not favor Northeastern at all, to where if you got an ultimate, you need to make sure to stay alive or get that thing off and panic push it before you do go ahead and inevitably go 6 feet under.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some of that kind of gut feeling ultimate usage out of Utica University on Lotus, which contributed to that map victory. So even if it's just helping you hold on to a site and add some anchor stability, like a Cosmic Divide here to contest an A site take of Ramps or main, then you just need to be ready to rip that. But for now, I mean, again, is this uncertainty of rotation, or I guess informed rotation, considering how deep Ionized is to clearing B main? So they know this should be an A hit. Well, look at this. Ionized, you better be ready for this.
Kind of. I mean, you lived. That's the good news.
Now.
But for a little bit. Yeah, it's pinch plays everywhere. And it's so fast. It's really like, what can you do about it? I mean, already 2 players knocked off. There goes JDL. Not really the biggest deal in the world. Oh, Henzo! That's big, actually!
Too confident.
I mean, I understand the play, but even then, you got a little bit of a hold down. Pristine, being kind of in that one-shot threshold to some degree, it's looking good for him. Knowing that Omen's getting the spike down, you have that denial, but you don't have the ultimates, you don't have the players prevalent, and, well, you got time as well. So, Tempest being in a 1v2 situation, this is completely doable.
I mean, Omen up for the reposition here, the cancel.
There you go.
Add uncertainty to the mix, but I mean, this Cosmic Divide, we have no information, such as the swing here. But I mean, the bullets should have rained. Now the shorty is positioned on default. It's a 50-50 in the dark cover.
You spray it out.
Are you a gambling man?
You
We'll
spray it out.
Anchor. Behind you. Get ready.
You gotta spray it out.
Oh!
There you go. There you go. It's enough time. Popped it a little too early, so you still gave enough time for the spike to get diffused with the smoke dissipating, so it's, well, a free pick. I'm surprised you even kind of invested for that alleyway rather than kind of going further around that little horseshoe, because that's just a lot more closer if you are playing that shorty angle. We saw the primary being whipped out, and that was a combined matter of obviously the smoke and timing of swapping your weapons there, which is really unfortunate. But still, one thing that isn't unfortunate is going to be Northeastern there. Finding that 3rd round. That is so darn critical. I mean, that is such a deep breath of relief carried by a singular player, to where, I mean, look at the score lineup. Sure, Orca hasn't really turned up yet, but this is the half where you can really kind of start to facilitate that. You just need that one player, that bottom player, to really just kind of skyrocket up, and the rest of the team to kind of keep doing what they're doing, because their kills are all there. They're still pitching in during these rounds, as much as it may have not felt like it. But just Utica, the round differential just kind of tells a different story, and you can't let that get to you.
And I mean, now, sides have swapped. Hopefully you get a chance to go on a run here early on. I mean, it's been 1-for-1 pistols the entire series thus far. Why would that change now? And so far, I mean, Shieldy being exchanged, anchored, and pinned in a corner. All
There
these
you go. Look
frags
at 'em.
lining up for Northeastern, but again,
This is
zero
confidence.
plays for the name of the game. And so far, Christine might be able to deliver that. A nice flash. They isolate one player, but the anti-flash from Ionized? I want to know where they were looking.
Enemy remaining.
Woo! Okay, a little concerned there for a second. I am going ahead. It may seem like I'm rooting for Northeastern to some degree, but I want to see this team light up. I want to see some level of confidence. I want to, as we mentioned earlier, see a map where we actually see some equilibrium in terms of these scores, because we've seen 13-5s, 13-6, 7, and just kind of in that range where the second team never really meets that double-digit checkpoint. And I gotta watch this team really flush out. I want to see Northeastern's entire game plan start to flourish a little bit, because their attacking side in a 5v5 kind of standpoint and competitive environment, Split does feel to be a little more attack-sided. And also, I want to see how Utica can use this kind of triple duelist setup on the defense, because this is where it gets a lot more difficult to really utilize it, kind of get creative, and you got to have these ideas ready to roll.
This is creative.
There you go.
I mean,
It's
yeah, you
doable.
4-person pushing them in, but these better weapons and this Astra support is gonna meat grinder it, placing Pristine in a 1v4. But I agree with you. That's the thing with this triple duelist composition, is you do have to put these grandiose gambles into play, because you don't have that utility to hold on to a site. That, or you need to play off-site and play for a retake, because that's when those flashes, that's when, say, a paint shell is going to be used for crowd control, is going to be used to force players to take these fights against your duelists. And unfortunately, a 1v4, though, yes, you have a Stinger upgraded from one of the fallen members of Northeastern, but it's got to find a lot of marks.
And even then, so many angles to check, and especially, yeah, I mean, I can't blame them. Immediately, if you get a sneaky first blood, you're saying 1v3, much more doable. But if you see that first player and somebody gets the detection on you, it's just, yeah, I'm not even attempting this. But realistically, I mean, Utica, as you mentioned, need to play the retake game, quite frankly, on this map. If you're not getting super creative, I think it really comes down to your IGL in this kind of situation. And as terrible as that sounds, I mean, you had an outstanding first half where you can be happy with the result, but everything following this entire half, you're okay with it. I mean, this is the trade-off here, where your IGL now has to be a lot more creative. I mean, sure, you've had an entire season work out this composition, so you're going to have some ideas, you're going to have some executions, you're going to have some defensive holes that can kind of work out, or at least stall enough for these rotations. But this is a grand final situation. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill team. This isn't just some other squad that you're running into inside your division. This is the best of the best, and you're going to have to make these adaptations on the fly, and that's going to create a lot more mental strain, not only for your IGL, but for your duelists to kind of be speeding up the game and taking those call-outs on the fly and still setting up something different to create that domino effect to once again reclaim that real estate and win that war of attrition. So Northeastern, this is their time to step up. I mean, already 5-9. We talked about that 3-9 or 9-3 curse. It's not really much of a curse in this situation. It's just more so of saying, okay, now they get on the half where they can actually play the game.
And I mean, so far, no contact has been made for either squad, but so much space gained by Northeastern, because again, maybe Utica University has learned their lesson, is playing for this retake. And if they can get this trade on a Tempest, yeah, they're in a good position so far. But again, counters, trades from Northeastern have been lining up. They now have some of these weapon upgrades, the backstab potential as well for Jinchun, meh, and they are traded out as well. So we're still at a 2v2, but I mean, the weaponry's equal at this point.
Yeah, I mean, good guns in everybody's hands. It really comes down to the rest of the kit available. And honestly, you gotta expect that Anchor, who's been absolutely frying, keep in mind, still this entire game, and having Wizard there's a duelist to kind of act as that agent of chaos, compared to Ionize, who doesn't really have a kit available. It's going to be working kind of merely naked to some degree with what you have as a Cypher. It comes down to Big Nate to facilitate everything. Already getting that first blood, shutting down that singular player. Wizard finds a trade on it, but do you expect the second? There's no way you would think Ionize would be right behind him. Why would that be the case? Well, because they won a 6th.
And again, I mean, we had 6 rounds in a row for Utica University Varsity A, and it would be a slap in the face if Northeastern returns in kind now that they are the ones on this attack. I mean, you said splits attack sided, but I don't think it's this attack sided for both squads
Yeah.
to be finding the success there. Needless to say, these teams know what they need to improve upon for this map moving forward. But now, I mean, I'm surprised again that we haven't seen a proactive timeout from Utica University.
Right. I mean, honestly, it's not too late yet. It's still a pretty big differential, but I think, honestly, Utico do want to save up a little bit more. They want to see how many ultimates they can accumulate over the course of time. They want to see what kind of resources are going to be available, and even then they still kind of, I think, want to go for that retake approach and kind of try that one more time before they really opt for it, because it worked well in that last one. And even then, they may not even need to get in that circumstance so they can pick up a gun and maybe get Henzo to go off. But unfortunately, that player does go ahead and inevitably fall. You're in a 4v4 situation, and this stall could just be something for him, because that's a gun available. Nobody really picked it up and is carrying it back, I believe. So, I mean, it's doable, but honestly, it's just a matter of killing time and just kind of feeling things out. And I can't really blame them for that. They have already awarded themselves with an insurance, so they just need to take it in flying colors.
3v2 as the dust settles. Information for Utica University leading them to believe this is going to be a B plant, correctly so. But again, Northeastern with these creative post-plant positions, it leaves things, leaves guesses for Utica University. And when you think you isolate one, Ionize is going to be there for the late retake backstab from heaven. So let's see if they can address it, get the timing right here. Because so far, it does not look away. Look, yeah, weapon collected, but dropped equally. Pristine. You don't have time to wait for them to push back into heaven.
Right. It just comes down to really just throwing out whatever you can, maybe creating enough distractions. I mean, timing's going to work out for you to some degree here. And you can put the pressure on to say, all right, yep, I can go for the spike and tap it. Maybe go ahead and get that Asher caught in the meantime. But with those stars there, yeah, that's not happening, big dog.
No.
You are just done for. And Tippus can find that kill. So 7-9. Northeastern, they're here to play. I mean, well played by them. Welcome to the game. We understand that, you know, there was a couple rounds leading up to this point where they were looking good, but I think this is finally where we can say, yo, only 2 rounds of a difference. This could be that double digit for both sides that we've been really looking for, because we mentioned, you know, waking up on the side of Utica on that first map didn't really happen. Northeastern had a lackluster second map, but these two are finally, I think, really starting to understand what each other bring to the table, and they're playing this constant game of rock, paper, scissors. It took an entire half to get there, but Northeastern, maybe with this momentum, being on the rear end of it and retaliating is a lot more rewarding.
Yeah, you get that late map impact that can carry forward onto the guaranteed map 4 regardless of who wins this. I mean, at this point, yeah, it feels like there were adjustments on Northeastern that we just haven't seen from Utica University yet on their defense. And this round, no exception. Mid left unchecked, run rampant by Northeastern for a B site to take. And now the retake comes through without numbers on their side.
And Chris freaking out.
And they know Ionize lurking somewhere, and they still get it wrong.
I love it. I love seeing.
There's paranoid, bro.
I feel like a psychology major when you can just read players like insanity through their hands and their aiming. But regardless, I mean, still in a 2v5 situation, you really can't blame them for just kind of being a little bit manic. I mean, there's just nothing you can really do here. You can maybe play for the exit frags. You can create some kind of level of tension to cut them off when it comes around to the just evacuation. But everything else there, I mean, Big Nate with 3 on the round, surprisingly doesn't even need these kills, already sitting on top of that rolling thunder. I mean, it's the rest of the team that really needs these allocations, but still, I mean, 8-9, this team, I think, has found a formula. They've gotten all the ingredients for it, and they are cooking.
All right, and I've been thinking this up, and I'm thinking back to that one eco round. I think it was round 2, where they had like 4 members pushed down mid. At this point, I feel like that could find success here for this squad.
Yeah, when you have more weapons.
That's where Northeastern's been going. Or, I mean, they're doing it towards A main, so maybe they overwhelm and get a weapon off of Ionized here. I mean, Ionized has been the villain in their storybook this half, that's for sure. Consistently, like you said, making them manic and panic there from where they could be. With that cam destroyed, yeah, Ionized having none of it.
And I mean, Ionize was a player that, keep in mind, during that last map, didn't really have much of a real effect. Surprisingly enough, kind of still being a thorn in the side, obviously, on the defense, but on the attacks, they're probably having much more of an actual effect. So it's good here from the side of Northeastern to kind of utilize this fact, and even better yet from Ionize to understand that they are lapping spawn. All of my kit is destroyed on A. Red alert, red alert. They are going ahead and lapping through, so push back, hold these angles, and I can just retreat because they don't expect me to be here. Insane first blood there. You're playing for the trades. You know that they're going to be looking all over the place and not really having the guns to be taking these fights on their terms. And sure, not looking the hottest in the world, but in a 1v3 situation, taking so long to get this rotation made. Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, Wizard, I don't think can really do anything here. I mean, look at that time. You already seen the evacuation. A ninja defuse would be crazy to at least attempt there if you knew that everybody was gone, but that is a checkmate moment. But regardless,
you're gonna lose the gun.
Maybe?
Maybe.
I think so. Yeah. Oh, that timing. I think you take that fight, Wizard wins it. If we just having that high ground. I mean, everything else though. Yeah.
Finally.
Looking away. This is finally something for you to, as I mentioned, taking a little bit more of a diverse approach to these retakes, or even better yet, just kind of outright holds, and just kind of, you know, testing the waters, seeing how everything feels before they really dedicate to it. Say, okay, now that we have a much wider range of possibilities to work with, and we've kind of really, you know, stretched our wings to some degree, it doesn't feel like we're just kind of discussing theoreticals. I feel like they really have a much more diverse palette to really be discussing off the back of.
Yeah. Ultimates Online, weapons will be back in their hands after that creative save strategy. And it makes sense to take it when it's 9-9, not when you're still in the lead, but it does make it a little bit dangerous, especially since, once again, this is your map pick that Northeastern is staging a comeback on. But I've seen promise at this point. It does just feels like Northeastern is hitting some insane shots, specifically them not able to shut down Ionized, even when they know exactly where they are. So we'll see what the strategy here is, and thus far, it looks like another gamble stack is in the cards. This time, I mean, they look like they're trying to address that mid-B split that has consistently worked for Northeastern. I mean, 3 members about to play male, you have your Jetpack Sight, your Omen, who has the From the Shadows, can ult back over to B if need be. I'm curious what this Bucky is going to do.
I think we all are. It's always a 50-50 whether that thing is just disgusting or whether or not it's just like, okay, yeah, you were playing for suicide there. But even then, it's not even going to actually get a chance to fight. It's not going to be there for that choke point. It's going to, well, be open-ended and understandably have to retake a site. That is, if this exec doesn't, or at least kind of works out, obviously goes through. But things slow down. If we see an actual hold come out, well then that's something. Because Anchor, keep in mind, that disgusting play on the attacking side, I feel like it's inevitable to wake up on the defense, but right there, Ionize already going ahead and being that first answer, getting the information and giving you all the reasonable space to say, okay, yeah, they're on the other side of that closet divide, no duh. Just push through and see what can get done, which is a really weird call, I'll say, but it'll work out.
I mean, I think it's a perfect call. I mean, you know these players are kind of isolated in their heavens, so you're trying to pick off these extremities, and so far it has worked. Pristine in the 1v4 has made their way on to the site, but with so many players still to find, a trade comes through, the perfect bait for Shinma, and 10-9. Yeah, they've claimed the lead. They've shut out the momentum that timeout had hoped to gain. And at this point, this buy feels very desperate out of Utica University. They're like, hey, maybe a surprise operator. Light shields across the board make it seem like it's going to be this round they lose. They're set to a save, and Northeastern would get map point. So it is a do or die.
I mean, none of those ultimates invested on the side of Utica, so you do have that as a little bit of insurance, but even more so, I mean, kind of considering the ultimates that are available. Bladestorm, that one's out the water. From the Shadows, just there's an easier answer for rotation, and that wasn't a concern there. The Viper's Pit being the only real difference maker you have in terms of these other bowlers to play with, and already Pristine with an opening kill on that operator. So good little change of pace there, but Northeastern, I mean, honestly, that's the double-edged sword of those timeouts, to where sure, Utica was just playing so darn fast where timeout actually slows them down on their attacking side. But Northeastern, I think, honestly, they were appreciative of that break as well. They said, okay, thank God. We couldn't keep up this pressure for that long. They give us a little bit of breathing room to kind of recalibrate ourselves and say, all right, let's get right back into the fray and kind of keep this consistent level going. But they don't really expect these wild cards because it took a round to get there, but Pristine is starting to wake up with.
I mean, the operator sometimes just is the solution to a defense, but unfortunately, double satchels and disrespect for the blinds out of Orca will mean it's still a B site.
I have the spike.
Take a B site plant. And with that plant, Orca will as well get that showstopper online to further contest to try and even the playing field. And again, Ionize the thorn in their side. They prick them and they run away. They stay alive. They stay a consistent threat factor that distracts and takes time away from Utica University. This time they realize we don't need to buy into it. We need to be more directive on this retake. And yeah, Rocket Fuse, Enzo's entry shut down. It's a 1v2 that is not going to go the way of Anchor 2D.
I mean, that round is quite frankly maybe the last nail in the coffin unless you just have an absolute miracle of a round. I mean, considering what you just invested in a round like that, you have ultimates to kind of go ahead and give yourself some leniency, but they're not a end-all, be-all kind of thing. I mean, ultimates, we talk about the utility in Valorant, and sometimes some people are under the school of thought of, oh, they win games, or they find yourself kills, or they guarantee kills, and some people are saying, well, they open up the window to get those kills. And at this level of play, they open up the window. I mean, they never reliably just guarantee kills for you. So knowing that Utica have those is great and all, but they just don't have the guns behind it. They have to use those a lot more conservatively, a lot more precariously as well. So honestly, knowing that it is now at this kind of point to where this is basically kind of that last round where Northeastern, if they win this, they're sitting in a guarantee, not only map point after this round, but a entire series point after this map. This is easily the most important round, I would say, the entire series.
And Ionized draws first blood. Just a fitting way to start this pivotal round. This time they don't, they don't withdraw. They stay towards A and Shorty get tracked out. Yeah, sure. But the issue is that they haven't been able to retake the B site. So even with that frag,
right?
Ionized. Oh no!
One enemy remaining.
It's just over. It's just over.
Yeah, did he know? Does he know? Oh, it sounded like he was faking him out.
It's just over. I mean, again, Ionize is still probably gonna get the last frag, the last word in this round. I mean, knifes out.
Oh, knife out. Yeah.
What is Ionized out at this point in KDA? We need to see this. Like, it's just
match point.
Like match point. The players 24 and 13. And I mean, I need to also analyze the downfall of Anchor because I would like to know what their KDA was before this half started versus now. Because it definitely has not been
12 and 2 at one point, right? During that first half?
So, I mean, 6 kills. And I mean, this has been a flawless half for Northeastern.
Yep. It's at that point to where, I mean, obviously we're seeing the deaths climb, but even the more so, we're seeing Ionize. We always like to go ahead. Like I said, I like to at least pick on Ionize specifically because I feel like that player's performance is do or die for Northeastern. It feels like they really put a very, very kind of cornerstone positioning and kind of responsibility on that player to say, we need your lurks to work, because if they don't, we either win in 4v5s or we don't win at all. And, well, as it seems right here, in a 5v5, they just can't keep up. That's purely off the back of Wizard getting a 4K in this round. And Pristine, well, understandably not really having too much effect in these past couple with these weird buys going through, says, I'll just play the role of wingman in this one and just get the defuse off.
I mean, all the information gathered that the players are heavy on Heaven and Orca. And they were doing a good job managing each incoming player, but at the end of the day, you can't expect them to just ace outright without the support of the team. So Wizard, on the other hand, I guess is going to pull out some magic, and they get 4 kills there, completely shutting down Heaven. Like you said, protecting that wingman diffuser of Pristine, and keeping Utica University's chances of split alive. 2 rounds now needed. Get this to overtime. The operator back in the mix for that defensive surprise that Utica University can leverage for a first blood. Let's see if it lands.
Yeah,
it does.
Hey, there you go. The round of a shorty still kind of paying off. I mean, considering you found 1 kill, which is more than what some players can say with a full rifle. I mean, now getting the operator back to work with your Pristine is still scraping it by, still getting the job done, but even then now, this is where it really starts to matter and really start to line up. I mean, I talked about that 11-9 earlier. That was the most influential. But, I mean, Wizard having that lineup in the last round, getting yourself right back into the fray. and still being alive in this circumstance, it really comes down to that neural threat and how much it can really surmount to. It gives you enough space to get on the site, get that spike down, but what comes after? Orca. That's the answer.
Out of charges.
And they know where two of these three players are, and there was the third. So again, Orca performing similarly to what they did last round. They heat off that initial aggression from these squads, but it's still. Oh, I was gonna say it might not be enough, but I mean,
yeah,
humanously, yeah, of course, Orca. If you find that frag with a paint shell, this just might be game.
Enough bullet stagger to just go ahead and lock that player off to guarantee the paint shell does enough. And Wizard being tagged as well just literally lets you know exactly where they are. 1 HP in a dream! The Blade Storm could be a right-click kind of miracle, but I understand it. Yeah, I get it. Just go ahead, Nate. Find that roundabout. Even then, you're running up towards heaven, just peeking it, playing the timer, being an absolute mosquito. You did enough, buddy. That's a second map for Northeastern. A 9-3 curse. Once again, flooding through, giving them that 2-1 lead here for the series.
That's gotta hurt. I mean,
yeah.
You got the 4K the previous round. What's even worse is if they had a Vandal instead of the Blades, they probably could have, wallbanged through the window and gotten the frag milliseconds earlier to get that round on board. Regardless, it doesn't pan out that way, and we are going to map 4, where once again, the script has been flipped, and Northeastern now will hold the lead.
They're just going ahead and playing that game of back and forth, but finally a map where, I mean, we called it, or at least I know I did. I know we discussed it to some degree of finally seeing that team and both these guys really just firing in all cylinders, showing up, saying both teams are sitting on double digits. And sure, it was off the back of a comeback, something that we don't really get to see very often by that margin. I mean, obviously expected to some degree. But yeah, the 9-3 curse once again starts ringing true, and it even then kind of ends up on that same deficit of what we usually see, of where you're not locked out completely for a half. You do find an answer inevitably, but only sitting at 10. Most teams find at least at 13-11 by the end, but Utica just kind of, it felt like they ran out of gas to some degree. Henzo doing a great job, Pristine doing just an outstanding. Obviously, the duelists doing what they're supposed to do and being at the top. If Anchor kept up that same performance we saw in the first half, I mean, that map was done and dusted literally what would feel like 20 minutes ago. But sitting at 18-16, as we highlighted that 12-2 at a certain point during that first half, that's the one that stands out the most. And just not really able to kind of keep that consistency, that's a big problem. Because, I mean, once one player steps down, it means somebody else is stepping up. And as I mentioned again, it is Ionize. Just being a Cypher and being the top frag of this map and turning it up on the attacking side, something I didn't really expect. But honestly, in rear view, should have. Because that player, that's where Ionize starts to go off. Play those lurking roles, get those early frags, even then those A-lurks that we saw over and over again, usually where you would see a Viper kind of playing it a little bit slower and stepping into those shoes, they didn't really need to do that. They had an Astra, so they're instead playing a lot more aggressive, allocating those 4 players, and then saying Cypher gives us a lot more information. Doesn't really have to be on site to collect all of that. And knowing they're going to be running the triple duelist, or even in seeing this, it's a perfect just spider's web for them. Just latching them in, understanding that if there's one guy pushing this, there's more than likely another one off the back of them, because the way they played that first half, it just tells us way too much.
And I'm glad you bring up starting halves, because for each one of these maps, it's then the player on the defense first, or the team on the defense first, that has taken that map at the end of the day. And the next map up, Icebox, albeit is Northeastern's pick, it's Utica starting out on the defense. So we'll see if that kind of defense starting at curse favors them to send us to map 5 or not. But we'll have to wait until after the break to see that unfold here. Stay with us for the 4th map of the Champions Playoff Grand Finals.
Well, well, well. Here we are. The fourth map that was guaranteed to us, but at the lead that, quite frankly, if you watch the first half of the split that just concluded and went to go take a bathroom break, go get some food, knock something out, for good or for worse, I hate to break some news to you. That was a heck of a comeback for the 9-3 to do its thing once more from the side of Northwestern.
It was, and that does put Northeastern the Huskies up 2-1 in the series. But we said this isn't a best of 3; it is the full length feature of a best of 5. So we still have Icebox to potentially Breeze in the mix. But that does mean that Utica will have to strike back and for the second time tonight steal away Northeastern's map pick of Icebox if they want a shot on Breeze. And I promised a harbor to you if we made it to Icebox, mentally, since we already knew we were going to go to this map,
Yeah.
at least from a game perspective. And I'm going to say that we should be seeing it out of Northeastern. But then again, it's usually Big Nate that plays it without Xing Tianma in the mix. So we'll have to see if, that substitution causes any kind of chaos. But what stands out to me more is the composition from Utica University, because they've only played this map once this season, and it was a loss. And they had a
Yeah.
single duelist. When you hear single duelist on Icebox, what do you think?
I think weird for them considering we just saw triple duelists.
Well, I meant like typically when you think a single duelist on Icebox.
Oh,
who
I
comes
mean,
to
I
mind?
think it's all right, but I mean, you could throw more out there.
It's the Jet that typically comes to mind.
Right.
It was what I was trying to go for, but what you can see here in the agent select is that they run the solo duelist of the Reyna instead. Now, my concern here is that with a Reyna pick, it's really feast or famine because you don't have that second duelist to rely on. So they either have to frag out and go huge, or it's gonna be a rough attack half for you. So when we look at how successful their attack half was on Split, it makes me a little bit nervous here. But then again, we did say that the curse has been whoever starts out on defense is the one that's taking the map tonight.
Which we've also seen Arena already, at least you and I, over the course of the season in the NECC, Arena when it comes around to Icebox. And it just doesn't show up the way you want it to. I mean, as you mentioned, Lisa, if I knew you were talking about in terms of age, like that particular spot, I was like thinking triple duelist to single duelist. It makes sense here for the map, but at least, yeah, in terms of the actual what agent is present in that single duelist spot, Jet makes a lot more sense, and Orca being on that Jet. We saw Pristine even on the Jet in Ascent. So we know that you can play that agent. It's just, you seriously are opting for this. You genuinely believe it is a better selection, and you have to warrant that right from the get-go.
And I'm curious how they're going to play it. I mean, we talked with an operator on the Yoru, so I don't think that's going to deter them in any way from being okay opting on this agent, because we know an op can be a core part of a defense. But I mean, for now, fairly pressure towards this. I drew a few members over here, and now with taking rotation back to A, it's going to be pretty much seized for a retake attempt. You might see Pristine fight for that kind of first blood, that overheal before the fact off the toxic strain, but the question is, will they find it and will they get out? Both are yes.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing, is going to be Reyna kind of holding down this A area of the map and just kind of using those dismisses to be just a complete nuisance. Just kind of dancing around these corners, making sure it's going to always be prevalent there. The biggest thing is going to be also in terms of just how much pressure is going to be exerted from this attacking side. You do have the Jet available. You got plenty of distraction coming through from that singular agent, and everybody else is just showing up where necessary. As much as I love Harbor, I love seeing Big Nate start strong on that exact agent because, well, that's really what it's going to come down to, is making sure to get the secondary, because Icebox, we just talked about a 9-3. This map is where we see it a bunch, purely because, I mean, just the equilibrium of this map and how anything is literally doable. I feel like it kind of, oddly enough, we didn't see as much Icebox ever since it kind of came back into the rotation. But this map, for the longest time, felt almost like another Ascent, as often as teams were picking it and really just getting acclimated with it. But with the introduction of new agents and Harbor also kind of coming into the fray to some degree, and now teams using Gecko to some degree, I mean, it just always want to switch up what this map is capable of bringing. I'm happy to see at least kind of that it's providing a fresh take, but it's not really going to change the outcome quite.
And talking about changed outcomes, my concern now arises for Utica that this is the first the first map where they did not win that initial pistol.
Right.
So they're already off to kind of an out-of-the-box start here. And you can see the response is to try and buy at least a few more expensive weapons, like this Marshall for the Reyna. But at this point, I mean, you've already found a frag. You've already had the plant go through for the side of Northeastern, you have a flank as well. So really, you need these two players, Jadel and Pristine, to have more of a distraction. Because if not, then yeah, Ionize with the better weapons going to have support from their team and the better weaponry to potentially deal with it all together.
I mean, ooh, I don't know about this. It really comes down. I mean, we talk about star players over and over and over again, and still, so long as a singular individual wakes up, especially if it's Jadel, that's something. But I don't think they heard the sound already, and even then, Henzo just ready, having the sixth sense pop up to go ahead and accumulate a thrifty for the side. So you talk about not winning the second round, they at least won the second, or the first, sorry, they win the second. So they get something to work with here. And honestly, if you're really trying to just mess a team's economy up, that's a much better way of doing it.
That's definitely a surefire way to put it. But, I mean, even then, I mean, you have the hero rifle now in the form of the Guardian with Qing Chin Ma. You're going to pair that potentially with a Reckoning, and that could be a little bit of a kink in the hose for this stream of rounds that we're going to see Utica going for. And it looked like they were going to pop it off Rift here mid, but they'd rather search for a frag here potentially first. Maybe challenge his Killjoy utility. And yeah, Wizard, you might want to get out of dodge.
Yeah, not really the best look for you, but Wizard can go ahead and do it. 1v3, it doesn't matter. I'll take those odds every day of the week. But speaking of 1v3s, Ionize, another KJ player with nothing but a classic, probably isn't as favorable. Can squeak behind enemy lines, but what really can you do with that? You don't have the spike. You're looking for a particular angle. And see, surely, yeah. Okay, I was going to say, somebody's shooting at you, surely.
One bullet.
I mean, it's an audible. It wasn't damaged, though, so maybe, you know, it takes that much for random to register. It has to take a bullet of damage. And then just says, I'll just heal it off at the end of things. But doesn't even need to do that because it's the conclusion of a round. Pristine is going to be that player I'm going to be consistently keeping my eyes on. As great as these players on the side of Northeastern are doing to start things off, I want to see what Utica can do and kind of keep this thing rolling, because Pristine, even though not being at the top, is still early. I want to see whether or not this kind of feels like an exponential growth, or not it just feels like static.
I mean, when it's the fourth map of the night and the fourth different duelist this person has played, I think you're in the right place to be trying to keep an eye on them. But for now, they're not going to get their chance to strike. Orca more just trying to fake A off this Blade Storm, getting invested. But I mean, they made no contact. They invested no initiator utility, so there was no reason for the side of Utica to rotate. So they're going to go full-fledged in this KJ setup into a potential paranoia from Henzo, who's been on a tear thus far and is still somehow getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, able to go ahead and at least get the spike down. That's the biggest thing here. I mean, just going ahead and creating that space for yourself. Going ahead and pushing and airing out the rest of this map. Having that wall now drop from the harbor. Not checking that angle, but it doesn't really matter. So much enemy presence already. Just looking to go ahead and overwhelm Utica. That Arena and a KJ alive. This is doable, but you could have timing here. There's so many angles to check that, quite frankly, there's the first, but immediately ready once more. So the 1v1, it just comes down to, well, while Wizard is alive, barely has HP, and even then more so, Nate has been frying tonight so far. So it just comes down to playing that ring around the Rosie.
So funny.
But if you're behind a crate that's penetrable, you don't even need to try it. Straight shots land every time.
The Wizard doesn't even look down to see how much time they have to spare. They get the defuse, they get the round, they keep Utica on this forward charge, and that round was impressive. It showed a rare lapse of Ionize, like we said, like you said, I should say. It really does hinge on their individual performance. And right now, 0 and 4 on the scoreboard. Without these mid lurks, without these flank pressures, you see the repercussions. Pristine gets a flank, he gets a frag, gets the distraction that Wizard needs to get those clutches on the board.
Well, another one underway. Utica clutching that one out. I mean, that was a very, very serious round for me, considering that that's where I want to say teams start to hit equilibrium and you really give Northeastern kind of a little bit of stabilization, and knowing that Utica are able to just kind of go ahead and nail that thing in without even using any of the ultimates. I mean, I would have warranted and said, okay, the Empress, that makes sense. That's totally fine. The lockdown, that would have been a bit overkill, but still just kind of holding things down and going to the next one. Finding this last pick is going to be really important because obviously you now have one player down, but that's all you want to keep it at, quite frankly. frankly. I was concerned of losing a whole bunch of guns and at least just kind of diminishing that economy to where this round just doesn't look nearly as doable. But Utica have now gone enough of a string of rounds, considering that second one, and everything past in has just been in towards their favor. And with enough wins on their belt and enough rounds accumulated simultaneously, well, there you go. You've built up enough of an actual fund to invest in an operator. As weird as it may be, for Arena, it's nearly the same as a Jet when you think about it. Except for it's not a free tailwind that you get every 2 kills. Instead, it's going to be a dismiss that you're having to actually invest and you only get 2 up.
Yeah. The lead established, Pristine pulling out that long anticipated operator here. And it
Okay,
looks like
that
they
is
are gonna
the
get
worst
caught
case scenario.
off guard. Yeah, I mean, that's the repercussions of running Arena with an op. You don't have that tailwind, you don't have that gate crash to get out if everything falls apart. And now that's an upgrade for Orca. They will gladly use here, potentially
Yeah,
strengthen
appreciate
this A site taker post plant.
You know what? You don't have a tailwind? That's really unfortunate, because I do, and I now have this operator to use it with. So, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, whatever you want to say. It's a nice little present bestowed upon me. But looking at Orca, I mean, even then, already having enough pressure on this site, now being in the exact situation where this operator is going to start to excel. On the attacking side, it's always a little bit shaky, but now that you're on the post plant, you're doing literally what you would do on defense, just holding an angle, hoping people swing into you, and there it is. Appreciate the free gun. I'll follow up and do it again.
But unfortunately, that is all they wrote. The perfect bait between the double controller to each grab a frag, and suddenly it is a 2v3. Utica has the possibility to get this round back in check, but they have to find this Viper. They have to get the pin down, because that advantage is exactly what Qing Jianma needs in order to get that round on the board.
I love they didn't carry the operator over either. I mean, they understood kind of, okay, the roles of that gun. Don't use it to push, just use it to hold. And it was a very, very nice of Utica to kind of hand the thing over for a singular instance of that post plant to get yourself that second kill. But afterwards, it's just not really worth pushing with, because, well, you wouldn't have found that initial blood if it was an operator versus operator kind of lineup. So consider that Northeastern now in that situation where they've gotten that second round, they have made themselves prevalent here. They have gotten themselves something, because that first round, that was the first actual rifle round they had won, and that was something they were really lacking thus far. So now, once again, going for this expensive round off the back of another operator, I mean, I want to see Utica. Was it a fluke? Who knows? We'll find out, because with a very, very aggressive push off the back of a Reckoning, which is always warranted, this is the point where you just press W key and just run through these guys if possible, but they're not really going for that approach. They want to go ahead and hold back.
I mean, Henzo's been trying to be that tip of the spear here to defend the site, right? I mean, yes, you have the Viper to lean back into with that double controller, but they haven't been able to, whether it be that utility to push them off, whether it be like an ultimate. So now it's that late run. In fact, they're going to be searching for a Shrouded Zep onto yellow, but it gets punished. It gets tracked down to keep Northeastern on the forefront, and it's just player after player falling. Not much coordination, just solo fights being taken, and the trades from Tempest in the back lines is what keeps Northeastern on an upward trend, and now one round away from tying us here early on for Icebox.
Finally waking up, finally getting themselves on the board, and even better yet, finally putting Utica University into a situation where they're having to go on an eco. That was kind of my biggest concern thus far, was whether or not we were actually going to see the day where Utica just don't have a buy. And after 2 operators back-to-back, I think it's pretty reasonable to think that, okay, if they don't at this point, they got to have some kind of money-generating glitch. But that's just not the case here. Finally stabilizing, finally putting this game into a level to where it actually feels like there's some answers, some diversification in terms of the actual guns in hand and the arsenals that you're working with and the utility belts to play off of. So Pristine, still working towards A. This is going to make the most sense. I don't think we're going to see this Reyna really go anywhere else, except for maybe the middle of the map on kind of an offhand or maybe for a curveball. But everybody else from Northeastern, I mean, it makes sense to just kind of go ahead and shove the problems towards these guys. You know they're going to try to answer you pretty close quarters, but, I mean, A-site, honestly, force them to use that dismiss, no Devour available, that's technically dubbing your book, except for the fact that you lost another player and you're at a deficit just for the hold.
And again, we wanted to see these retakes because we know that they can have this coordination, and it finally aligns for the Thrifty for a 5th round to put them right back in driver's seat. They get a buy back together. And again, this is the first, I feel like, time we've had like it go back and forth between these two squads, right? The first two maps clean sweeps 13-6, 13-5 for each squad. Last map was that uncharacteristic streak for each team on their attack half. But now, I mean, it's toe for toe, blow for blow when series point is on the line favoring Northeastern.
I mean, even then more so, you got to look at the kind of the lineups that are happening here. I mean, we talk about whenever Northeastern really start firing in all cylinders, obviously every player is there to kind of pitch in. Ionize has not gotten a kill this entire half, and this isn't really a map where you can lurk about and maybe get these trades and get those early picks because you're just lining up right in the middle, and it's never nook or cranny. It's a legitimate lineup that you're fighting every single time. So Ionize being there, you don't have nearly as much leeway to kind of get the job done, and even in Pristine, that's mighty unfortunate. That's a little bit of a whiff for Ruski, but everything else, so I mean, Northeastern, this is a round that's seemingly shaping out for him because while they have expended, sure, that lockdown, the only thing that's there is the Hunter's Fury wasn't used in retaliation. Northeastern has a reckoning if they do want to delay anything even more, and that's what they opt for because Big Nate is just frying, quite frankly. That they want to make sure that we are guaranteed a fourth. And I think that's a very, very good idea of investment, saying there's a lot of rounds left still. We can get another one. Just go ahead and pop it.
And I mean, you talked about it, Ionize. Yes, they haven't come online, but I feel like Qingtian has picked up that slack for the team. I mean, they're the player on site causing these disruptions that Ionize usually does on these lurks. So now, Wizard, obviously, they could get a buy, they could get a save, but they want to do some economy damage to Northeastern. Unfortunately, Northeastern not going to break that threshold, not going to take those gambles. So again, they are within one round of tying us up here on Icebox, but that round more felt like a stumble when, again, I feel like University is starting to get the groove of things.
Yeah, even then more so, I think, quite frankly, if we do see Utica, I mean, Wizard is putting up numbers, let's be real, but is that really going to transition over to the attacking side? Do we see Wizard still kind of consistently doing that? Because we've already seen a Utica player, as much as I hate to bring it up again, kind of do an outstanding job on defense, and then whenever it gets around to attack, it's, uh-oh, where did he go? I'm afraid that they may see that same exact kind of thing happen once more, because I mean, a KJ, you don't really expect it too much, and even then Ionize, if anybody's going to go off with a Sentinel on the attacking side, it's going to be Ionize, and for that to happen, not yet, it's a little bit disconcerting, I'd say. But with Northeastern already having a blood on the board, picking Persine off, that's an Empress not to be working with, and even then more so, that's a duelist unit that A site's going to feel a lot more open. That cues a little bit of a rotation. I would love to see if they want to flex up maybe the middle of the map, kind of stretch that out some more.
Look at where Orca is. If they had remained quiet, they would have had the wraparound to that A execution, but instead, them recognizing the rotation from Utica, they've called back the forces to this B site. And I'm hoping that early audio cue that's going to come out of the Omen means the team will have a chance at getting this round intact. Orca, in the meantime, working alternative avenues here, taking this stroll through kitchen, to say the least, since there's no Killjoy utility to deter them. And there it is, the shutdown, the trade. Ionize finally hitting those shots that you wanted to see, Nick.
Yeah, I'll just keep my eye on that mini-map. I'm not going to lie. I was fixated on Ionize and looking through that middle encounter that was happening there because, I mean, that is a do or die for the round. 2 free kills or 2 kills essentially given up, which really just sets the numbers over to Utica's advantage. But speaking of advantage, there's just nothing really to gain here. Just nothing but 4 players looking down the lines of sight at one singular individual who just can't really get the job done with nothing but a bulldog at hand. So 5-5 is their score now. Northeastern finally managing to bite back in some respect after that first round, being seemingly the only time they were really up. But here they are looking to get things back together. But Utica, that's also by the deficit, I would say, the ultimates being invested. No Empress just yet. That's a problem I like to see with a lot of Reynas, where they just don't like the ultimates all that much. And that feast or famine, I mean, honestly, the dominoes start to topple a lot quicker. While sure, you still have to knock that first one over manually, everything past that point just feels like it goes faster and faster and faster. So if there's a time to really bring speed to the table, this could be it. But who knows, because already sniffed out, good exchanges being made, but a defensive Hunter Fury kind of stalling it to some degree. It doesn't matter if the buys aren't in their favor, the utility is finally being wrung out.
And I mean, you said Ionize was the one you want to see causing these sort of issues from mid, but Tempest has been doing a great job on that. Finally, JDell's able to shut it down, able to right the track.
Oh my god.
And that might be exactly what they need for Utica to find this round. Big Nate in a 1v3 now. Weapons collected hopefully for these Utica players. But again, it's solo utility usage with no response. I mean, you saw it. A Lear, a recon bolt. There's no players, no coordination, so fights can get isolated, especially when there's these high tides in effects. Try to step as well. Get punished, but they run out of bullets. They run out of corners to hide in. And again, it's J-Del with these impactful multi-frags like from Lotus.
Get that shot at least maybe, what, 3 bullets earlier? I think, quite frankly, that's doable by Nate. But the unfortunate reality was you had nothing left inside that magazine to really get things rolling. But regardless, it's still, as soon as you fumble around, I mean, the ratio of how things have gone thus far in these past 5, you cannot be more happy with the result, quite frankly. I mean, going ahead, that 2-1-2, you're saying, sweet. If that's where our streak ends, at least for this half, you have done more than enough to rebound from that second round being lost and alleviating your concerns from what was probably arising very quickly, looking at that score just go up and up and up on Utica's side. So now we get to the last round of the half, and Utica, all these stalled out ultimates I mentioned earlier, if there's a time to pop them, I mean, why not immediately off the rip for this one?
Oh, and again, it's the thoroughness of the Sova utility. Puts Anchor City in an uncomfortable position. Too many angles to clear, and finally they are spared. So 4v5, Orca expanding upon that. At this point, it feels like one player after another throwing themselves towards the cause and coming away with nothing. But there it is, feast or famine, and it is Thanksgiving for Pristine here. They even the playing field, make things a 3-on-3, completely stall out that B-side exec. They have to cash in on this lurk from Ionized. Unfortunately, KJ utility still in range. An early indication, it should be an early rotation. Thus far, nothing except these players in spawn seizing for the even retake, potentially off the lockdown.
I mean, well played here for Northeastern. I mean, understanding that after those first 2 kills, you mentioned the feast. I mean, go ahead and only limit it to an entree. You don't want to have anything else more. Really go ahead and beef that to Pristine. You go somewhere else, let that Empress run out, and then just don't let this guy continue that reign. So already with the lockdown available, that is going to be their last attempt. This is what they have to work with. And when you look at Northeastern, having that double controller lineup and just having a Viper and nothing else is enough to at least go ahead and play this entire denial game and at least play for the lineups. Already Tempest knowing this spot, I mean, it's a no-brainer, getting it out in the open. It is just one by one, play off the audibles, work with each other, and the defuse going off from the rope is enough of a switch up to at least get yourself one, and it's all down to Big Nate, finding the first, but once again, not able to manage the second there when it matters most.
A Wizard is just so good at navigating these retakes and these clutch scenarios. I mean, yes, Pristine loses their life at the end of the day, but you want to walk away with those rounds, and in this case, the advantage at the half. Another 7-5 on board for the squad. We'll see how they can work to close it out, because we know that when these sides swap, that's when things get dicey for both of these squads, when they get on that attack second hand. And again, now we get to see that Reyna and how it'll function on an entry compared to a Jet. You don't have that dive agent unless you count the Omen, unless you count Henzo, maybe with a Shrouded Steps to replace it. But we'll have to see that in action for me to truly process and understand how it functions for this squad.
And even then, we could also see a more legitimate hole with that operator from this Northeastern side. I mean, with the Jet in play rather than the Reyna, the operator has a chance to kind of stay in the game much longer, not be much kind of a one-off or kind of 2-round-off scenario where it's just kind of being done and dusted and just being expended. It's going to be an actual investment that can carry over the course of a half. So I think Northeastern, they have a little more available to them to actually create these stalls. But the issue is when Pristine is able to slip through the cracks like this, it makes their job much easier on the side of Utica. I mean, it makes this half essentially look like the freest thing to where you got to keep ropes under this guy, because that's going to be your one thorn in the side if it really comes down to it.
I mean, yeah, if you struggle to dive into a site, go for these early frags instead, and they have definitely done that. Now at the position of Ionized confirmed, you don't have that concern in the back of your mind like there consistently was on Split. So an easy plant over on A, with the numbers advantage established, you leave one lurking player, in this case, Anchor 2D. You can make quick work of that rotation and quick work of that pistol. So this the first time both pistols go in favor of Utica.
I mean, great start coming out there from Utica. I mean, considering that we didn't see him win the pistol round in that first half, they made sure to just absolutely run by with flying colors, everything following after that. I mean, 4 consecutively really no answer available in the hands of Northeastern, considering it's so early in the game. You just completely robbed them of their own pockets. But now, when they do end up winning that round, and Northeastern making a relatively similar investment to some degree, hoping they kind of get that trip off, I don't know if it works in the same level, because Utica, it was like an element of surprise kind of situation, but Northeastern are already giving up this real estate. They already are giving this respect over to Utica, and they're not really stalling much. We would have already seen 2 bloods during that first half whenever we saw that Thrifty come up. Here, Spike's already down. You're playing for retake, and you really ain't got the rifling behind it.
And that's a concern in itself, because I said site takes were going to be an issue, not post plants for the squad. I mean, all of this post-plant utility, a Sova, a Viper, a KJ, it won't matter if they're all dead, which is exactly what they're using this high tide for. Block visibility. Don't give these fights over, because like you said, they don't have the weapons for it. And Cove is in place, but just before the defuse is finished, we might see Wizard bail this squad out, but they're out of points. A weapon upgrade from Ionize, the 3K to show that they have signs of life here in the second half. Thrifty delivered in kind compared to that first half. And, okay.
Didn't carry over the Vandal? They didn't even know the Vandal's bot, though, to be fair. I mean, Orca just dropped Pristine, so... I mean, they probably didn't even know that gun was available, which is funny in its own right. But, I mean, even then, better yet, it's funny that Northeastern can clap back in the exact same way we saw Utica manage to do in that first half. I mean, it's just an absolute showcase from both these squads of what they're capable of managing to do whenever their back is up against the wall. And we've already seen Northeastern, obviously, in that first half of what they can do. They just got to make sure to really drive that thing home, because I was expecting the momentum from that second map, or that third map, sorry, just really nail this one in. But they are finally starting to see the signs of life. It just took them a little while to kind of, once again, find that burst.
I mean, Outlaw, most popular on this map, and Lotus, and it's definitely getting the job done here for Orca. At the moment, a 2v4 and a lifeline for Wizard. They're gonna try and play things together.
You had to see it.
I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't a trade from Chin Mall. I mean, they want to keep the numbers advantage, so respect there.
One enemy remaining.
1v1 granted, Spike down. Last remaining is Wizard, and with communication, you know that they're one.
Easy call there, no matter what. 8-7 on the board. 3 guns carrying over into the next. Legitimate rifles, better yet, at that note. So, good looks here for Northeastern, once again finding these bursts of energy, understanding that this is kind of the home run for them. This is where they can really close things out, because they're keeping it even. They just got to find the X factor that really drives them in. And quite frankly, I'm once again kind of just keeping up to where that whole ideology of you're only as good as your worst player. And Ionize is at the bottom, but far from being the worst player on their team realistically. So we're expecting this team to really start to wake up at some point. And after these past couple rounds, we've already seen new signs of life once again kind of emerge.
And I think Utica's picking up on the fact that with this Reyna, it's harder to take a site, so they're contesting them head on earlier, and it is working. Orca, if the operator finds first blood, goes down on it, looking for a third. The Glad almost lines up, but it's a rare whip here, and finally they are punished for that overheat. But the job is done. The numbers advantage secured here for Northeastern. They still have Tempest with all of their utility on site to delay, to deny, even a reckoning for the retake, Mick.
I mean, they got plenty to work with. I mean, let's be real. I mentioned that operator that is more than likely going to do a lot better in Jet's hands. And Orca has already gotten more kills with the operator than Pristine did that entire half in this one round. Even then got more kills than Pristine off the round that Pristine bought the operator. So, I mean, obviously going to have a much better testament to what that gun's capabilities are going to be, but even then more so, a much more defined testament of what this team can accomplish on this defensive side. We've already seen some outstanding stalls, and that's really going to be the biggest thing there, picking off that rain initially, because the rest of the team, I mean, it's Sova, it's not a KO. Can't really entry onto site like anybody else, so you're relying on your Omen to do all that. And Henzo has been a consistent factor, a consistent fragger, better yet. I mean, it's just not enough to really clutch out a 1v4, especially when there's 10 seconds remaining on the clock. You don't even have that spike. It's just hope for the best and try not to die.
I mean, I really wanted them to get that orb and ult back over to the B site, because that Killjoy turret let the entire team for Northeastern know that was an A rotation. So if they head back and meet them there with the from the shadows and kind, that could have been a possible round. But like you mentioned, sometimes when these sides swap, Northeastern goes on a run. That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what Utica is going to attempt to stall out with this timeout. They're going to rethink because clearly there's some disparity. I mean, you have one player, I mean, their Killjoy stepping up, being 21 kills on the scoreboard, with the rest of the team not performing at that same caliber, and it's struggling to get these next few rounds, these pivotal rounds on the board before double digits is breached.
And the issue here is that you're not even planning for a singular round of retaliation, right? To get yourself that lead. I mean, you were planning for 2, quite frankly, which is extremely difficult to do. Looking at Northeastern and looking at their money, they have surmounted enough of a wallet and a hedge fund to where they're not really concerned, even if they do end up dropping that operator. I mean, Orca having an investment, having that Blade Storm, you have a player prevalent, and you have an extra gun on hand at all times. So you're looking at 2 full buy rounds, worst case. This is kind of that upwards hill battle that you start to face as a team whenever you do reach that kind of equilibrium, to where if you can't manage that same momentum carrying over halves, you have to look at what is available to be that X factor for you, whether or not it comes to where something you can buy or not. And, well, the 2 things you got is a From the Shadows and an Empress is what I'm looking at. That's the easiest thing to just kind of go ahead and take an eye at, but everything else past that just isn't the most impressive. They don't really have the best guns in hand. Their approaches on the site, I mean, Pristine is always trying to slip through the cracks once again. I mean, it's like what we saw in that first round, but even then, it didn't really even barely work then. So for the rest of this map, look, you're going to keep on just running into players and just keep on getting absolutely choked up, because if Pristine dies, the rest of the team just can't do anything with that.
That read was insane in itself. 3 players made to completely contest the Utica University explosion, hopefully for this B split. So now, I mean, the lurk has failed. You have to have Henzo join up with the rest of the team, but you still haven't made it past Tempest. I mean, when you don't have the Viper smokes in the mix, yeah, you're going to take those head on. With worse weapons, you lose them 9 times out of 10. Wizard, 1v5, Guardian in hand, isn't granted a single frag. A flawless drive for Northeastern to claim the lead and deny. I feel like we have not seen a momentum gain out of a timeout from either of these 2 teams.
I think we've seen, like, you know, sparks. We've seen attempts. We've seen close calls. I want to say, especially like during split, whether or not it was kind of on the immediate round or the one afterwards. But still, I mean, Utica, they had to have taken this second round into account. As I mentioned, that timeout wasn't for 1 round. It was for 2. Whether you win or lose it, you still got to have an answer to follow up off the back of. And where this is the round where you essentially could have every single one of your ultimates, this has to be the one you were discussing.
I mean, for once, they've done a good job of denying those initial frags, but the Sova utility doesn't reveal that there's more than meets the eye here. 4 players, and they are just going to go for it with this lockdown. My concern, though, is that they're seasoned for a flood retake, and Orca 3 HP says they might as well risk it for the biscuit, and although it doesn't land, they also got enough damage to finish them off with the Hunter Fury, and so far, it has 1-for-1 frags, meaning it's going to be a 4-on-4, where now they get their chance to strike back. They activate their trap card of a lockdown to funnel these players off site to make them exhaust that post-plant utility, but Pristine is the one disrespecting it now. They get a frag, they will get detained. That's gonna mean a trade.
I mean, that's what you're looking for, but everybody is already spaced out. I mean, all the players, for the most part, got out of that detainment area, and they were already pushing for that war of attrition. They've gotten the real estate. Northeastern, though, problem is, one singular player, that being Ionized, is left in a 1v3 situation, just can't close that out. Utica, after such a massive expedition in that last round, it felt more like it was war, like they discussed that round instead. Northeastern were totally caught amiss in that. Didn't Hunter's Fury the lockdown, but instead opted to go immediately afterwards, and just, I mean, I'm still kind of at a loss of that game plan there. Just waiting for it to go off, and maybe going for that site denial, that plant denial, but even then, what do you really accomplish there? You're only getting a little bit of utility. You're not finding more than one when you can have those bodies on site to just kind of be there and be prevalent.
Yeah, it definitely feels like Northeastern hasn't changed their approach. They look for these first bloods, they get out, and they just hope that the rounds where it doesn't go their favor is the gamble doesn't pay off for an off chance. This round, for example, Ching and Ma gets the first blood, gets out unscathed, but unfortunately, no rotation from Utica University means they throw themselves right back into the fray, and they come away with these frags. Unfortunately, Orca, Shorty, off a kill apiece. Jadel, though, strikes back for the advantage, and they are not done. could get the timing through the dark cover here. It fades just at the wrong time for Tempest. 3K on the board, double digits for Utica University to keep that chance at map 5 alive.
I mean, gotta give it to Orca there. Just absolutely putting on a masterclass, at least to hold things on as long as possible, but Tempest just couldn't make it to the cut in time. And seeing that Utica University kind of did that almost untainted, considering that already you have the 4 ultimates to work with off the back of that, the lockdown being the only real thing invested, that the Viper's Pit on this map and a post plant, I mean, other maps it feels like it can be maneuvered, especially with the kind of compositions we've had with Yorus in play, with, you know, the geckos available, but with nothing but maybe the harbor inside on the A site, you just don't have enough kind of verticality to really get a read of where that Viper can be to sniff them out.
So again, they want to head towards this A site where they have found success. A change from Northeastern is they don't go for those initial floods. Instead, they're just going to hold down the site off this toxic screen, and that strategy adjustment seems to be successful. That's when they unleash Orca. That's when they secure, spike control, and they're going to leverage this harbor kit to keep control of it. A 2v5. The two clutch players, though, for for Utica University still alive. Jadel and Wizard, they've done feats like this before. We'll see if they can accomplish it again.
Information at least given by one of these players to let you know that Wizard was cut off towards Bell, and well, the dart coming from Pipe, it's just an easy call to say, look, just pinch the guy, close out the round, and give ourselves a flawless. A big attempt, a big round there for Northeastern, but also pretty good for Utica, all things considered. Sure, they don't really have an insane buy on a round like this, but I mean, the fact that they didn't really waste anything in that round, that's the biggest thing I'm looking at, is they understand, depending on who dies first, which feels like 5 times out of 6 usually feels like Pristine. Not really the biggest deal in the world, but I mean, if Pristine ever does live for a singular kill, you know that immediately after that, they're saying, look, let's at least invest one ultimate and make sure to push this numbers advantage for ourselves. The Hunter's Fury, not really sure what you're saving that for besides a lockdown, so I think honestly you have enough time to build that thing up if you use it the round afterwards, but that has already gone ahead and come and gone. Everything else, though, really comes down to once more. And you shut down Pristine. You shut down Anchor, so that's no Viper's Pit. That's honestly kind of better considering the circumstances. But with this rogue Reyna pushing up, finally says, nah, we got to put a leash on that.
I mean, yeah, the A site's been kind of a 50-50 gamble for them in this round. They don't want to take that chance. And so somehow not spotted out, even with the indicators off of the Reckoning. They should see the jet through the window. A little bit too late, and the trade will follow suit. Suddenly, a 3v2 weapons collected, A site secured. The rotation is met here. Question is, how long can they hold on, and can they get the trades off of each other? So far, no. And yeah, those are ones that Northeastern can easily win. Big Nate takes the time to understand what just happened, because that's how fast that retake was. But the rest of their team gets to defuse and gets the lead right back in the Huskies' favor.
Probably a little stretch or something. I'm glad we were all kind of like, hey, you good?
Deep breath.
It is what it is. I mean, it's getting to the point to where, I mean, we're both at double digits. It's a stressful game. Northeastern trying to close this thing out. Obviously, you win out this map. You can call it a relatively early night out of the best of 5, all things considered. But I mean, Utica are the ones really trying to drag this thing out. And once again, it comes down to, what do you have available by the time you even get onto site? They haven't really managed to get to site on this A. And I just don't know how I feel about going for it once more. You don't have the lockdown to work with, and I understand you're scared of B. You don't want to run to Orca and that operator, but
yeah, it's bad.
I mean, while this people being an iffy round to do it, you've ran to Orca on the operator on A more times than anywhere else, quite frankly. If there was a time to go through the middle of the map, it'd be if you sniff out maybe a singular gun here.
I mean, I feel like most of the times they've gone mid, though. They get clotheslined because of how many members are present. I mean, with this reserve positioning newly formulated by Orca not aggressing towards A, you have 2 players that can immediately contest from below Boiler, and the KJ that can push down to. I thought for a second the Reyna was going to get missed by that drone, but at the end of the day, they know it's an exec at this point. So here comes the Harbor utility to try and deny, but this Paranoia Lear combo means Pristine is on their way in. But look at the timing here. From Jingtian Ma, they don't know, and it's Wizard from above to rain down terror. The response is in kind.
And I mean, it is just a Northeastern showcase here. I mean, able to find every single necessary kill, and what looked good for at least as long as you could hope for. Jadel able to kind of go ahead and at least manage a couple kills. Oh my god, I'm able to find everything you need for a swift 1v3. A player that, well, we've seen these kind of circumstances over and over again. Mainly Big Nate on that defense having to manage that. It's JDL once again finally waking up to do it once more when the team needs it most.
It's giving me flashbacks to those last few rounds of Lotus, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, 3Ks, 4Ks to clutch out these rounds, and
That was fashionable as a get-go.
I am more surprised that when I look at that leaderboard that JDL is not positive. Like, they deserve to be at this point with these impact frags. And so far, I mean, there's 5 ultimates for Utica, so this would be an atrocious round to lose and let Northeastern get that map point first. And here's that rarity that you asked for, make them heading towards the B side off the rip, and it's right into Orca and that operator.
Well, it's Pristine who's gone, and it's a trade coming up from Henzo. So things are doable here, but my biggest thing is already we are seeing an attacker KJ lockdown come through on top of a Viper's pit simultaneously just done. So that is, A, obviously very unfortunate for Tempest. But B, it's, well, for everybody else, maybe could be good. Utica finally managed to get themselves a little bit of pressure. The detainment goes off, and even then you can manage to get right back into the Viper's pit. But with both of them overlapping, we are seeing a whole lot of green and a good bit of red intermittent between it. But with this number, with the score, with the numbers playing into Northeastern's advantage, not in terms of rounds, but in terms of man count, you have at least maybe a Sova playing towards the middle of the map, waiting for some kind of call to where you can get Hunter's Fury off to play that denial game to say, look, buddy, get off. That's damage done, and it's our side to hold.
I mean, Viper's Pit plus 100 Fury, there is no way you're getting out of that. And albeit a lot of utilities being diminished here, Anchor being as low HP as they are in a 1v4 without it being planted means that's an easy 1-for-1 trade. And I definitely cast a curse there. 5 ultimates and it still is a Northeastern map point reached first, but map 4 and Serious Point, there is no way this doesn't go the full distance, right, Mick? There's no way we don't go to OT. Right?
You really want this thing to drag out then, I'm guessing.
I don't know, do I?
It's just like, I mean, Northeastern though.
Say something different.
The big thing though, already being here, I mean, gun's still available. Operator, look at the buy for. I'm afraid to say literally anything at this point, but Operator in the hands of Orca, that's expected to get at least somewhat of a solid start, or at least get a hit off on somebody, whether or not it be feed or anything. The big defining factor here is Ionize. Lockdown available, ready to roll. In the middle of the map, waiting to use it for that retake, not investing for any kind of a stall. You're expecting Orca to find that early pressure, but you gotta make sure this guy's side is watched. So there it is, Henzo, nice little trade coming through. You know players are gonna be pushing the A side off the back of it. Is anybody rogue? Is anybody somewhere else? Well, considering those numbers and how things just went, and you know the buys aren't really looking all that hot for Utica, you don't need to move to really get that read. Pristine knocked down as well, 4v3 situation, Bladestorm in hand, lockdown, ready to roll as well. It's at the point where Tempest, it is this guy's map to really show up because it comes down to the stall because Orca has knocked down every single player on that right side.
Yeah, an Anchor in the hot seat, a 1v4 to keep their chances at the Northeast Playoffs Grand Finals title alive. Considering the Northeastern has been up 2-1, the backstab carries, but that weapon is so far away to collect that the rotations could be met here from the Northeastern squad. I think it's a worthy gamble. Window, a threat. They recognize the 1v3 that they cannot plant just yet. Plenty of time to work with. They barely missed the opportunity. On to Big Nate. And again, I mean, there's an operator in the mix here too somewhere. They have no information. And Northeastern is giving them a shred of confidence.
And you're absolutely stuck between a rock and a hard place. Lockdown going through, all the pressure there. It's just like, no matter where you go, you are in shark-infested waters, and Northeastern are well aware of that. Able to close things out. A great defensive hold coming through for them. A great bit of retaliation, considering what we saw in that first half. But Northeastern, we saw it at the very start of this entire series. They seemed like they were ready to show up. They seemed like they were ready to play. And while Lotus sure was their map that they picked, it was a little bit of a fluke in the record. Not the biggest deal, though. I felt like there were so many wild cards here tonight and so many players stepping up at the right points in time that, let's be real, JDL was a big part in actually just kind of elongating this series. Whether or not it come to rounds there on Icebox, but better yet, that entire map of Lotus, it felt like it was a masterclass by him to really keep things rolling.
I mean, 13-6, 13-5 domination from each team, and then to go double digits for double digits these past two maps.
Right.
It is only like it's very sad that we didn't go to that fifth map because that's what it feels like would have been uh deserving of these two teams and how tooth and nail it truly was. But
Yeah.
like you said, at the end of the day, when there were shortcomings from the Northeastern squad, somebody else stepped up, whether it was Ionize and their consistency or Orca there when Ionize wasn't delivering on Icebox with that
Split.
operator with those blades. It was just insane. And as we jump over to the stats and the recap of that last map, it's going to show just that. Orca on top, 9 first bloods. I want to see how many of those were from the defensive half because my guess is it is the stark majority.
Yep.
Well, on the side of Utica, right? Wizard was delivering, like I said, in those post-plant scenarios, in those clutch scenarios. And Pristine, while they were getting online, it was a little bit too late. And they were at the receiving end of a lot of those first bloods. So they
Right.
couldn't leverage that kit, those leers, to help out the rest of the team.
It felt like, I mean, when it came around to that secondary half, I mean, we got to obviously put a lot of emphasis on this map specifically, or ever better yet, all of them to some degree of the defense. Right here, the majority of the kills of both of those top fraggers came from that defensive side. It was Wizard on those holds towards the A side. It was Orca. Same exact thing, holds on the A side, but with an operator instead. And I even then mentioned it that we saw the guy warming up earlier on, able to pick up Pristine's operator and say, I got more kills with it in a singular round than you did with an entire half. And I'm going to just go ahead and replicate that because you just gave me a free warm up there on the attacking side. But looking at the entire course of the night, that defense was just a huge testament to what was available. I mean, even then, whether or not just be kind of holding on by just the grit of your teeth, especially Split, as I mentioned earlier, I'm still looking back to that 11-9 round on Split. I said it was going to dictate the entire series. And I mean, I want to feel like that's exactly what it did. We saw finally, these teams able to step up. And it was more of the setup on Split, I want to say. That map set the entire momentum going forward because rebounding like that and just finding a 9-3 comeback and then saying, all right, let's run it back and do it once more. Momentum, as small as it may be, it does carry across maps. That I don't think Utica really nailed it in during that first half enough to say, look, we are here to play once more. They said, look, we're catching up and now we're playing. But Northeastern, that was just kind of a fault from their side. Ionize was like 0-6 to start off Icebox. You said, eventually, this player will wake up. You're not going to snuff him out for an entire game. And once that happens, keep in mind, they were the menace. They were the absolute thorn in your side, not just for map number 1, but map number 3, and then eventually at least just being a contributing factor in map number 4 because they have done their job for the course of the night. They put us in this situation. You're just asking for everybody else to just do anything to close it out.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we could definitely say that Utica is going to be haunted by the 9-3 curse in their nightmares for the next few weeks. But that does mean that Northeastern is crowned your Northeast victory is here for the NECC Champions League. And very, very well deserved. But that is not all of the NECC finals action happening this week. You have another full-length feature of a best of 5 for Rainbow Six tomorrow. And then we have some League, Overwatch, and Rocket League to round out the end of your week. All of that brought to you by amazing talent, much like Mick and myself. And it's always a pleasure to cover this collegiate action because, I mean, it shows how close in contention these matchups can be when these teams hadn't faced off for the entire season until this point.
And even then, I mean, more so in the best of 5 format. I love casting grand finals just because I love seeing these games turn, like I said, less of a sprint into more of a marathon, showing just kind of the elongated pressure that can really just dwindle on a team. And if you can lead the game to draw enough, as I said at the very start of the series, you can go ahead and completely forget any shortcomings over the course of a series. But if they survive Icebox, I think honestly Utica pull that thing out. But still, that 9-3 haunting them, any kind of deficit, any kind of lead they had in Icebox, it's just like, well, they came back from worse. So who really knows? And that's kind of the beauty of it. Grand finals, I mean, it's what more could you really ask for? And as you mentioned, we're going to have a whole heck of a lot more of it over the course of this week. Obviously, if you're not really into Valorant as much, or at least if you don't care about the other esports, it doesn't matter. NECC's got it all ready to roll. And not only will you catch us here, maybe, yeah, we got Nationals coming up next week. So things aren't really done just yet, but at least for the regular season, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for Valorant, and we'll catch you here with a little more action tomorrow on R6.